Good morning. Good morning. It is February 28th. So, though February is coming to an end, it seems that maybe this trial, I don't know, isn't. We are in the prosecution's rebuttal case. The prosecution had their case in chief, they rested. The defense had their case, they rested. The prosecution gets to rebut just things that go directly to evidence elicited by the defense. And we saw the judge asking about that yesterday afternoon. If this gets cumulative, I expect we will hear lots of objections sustained by the court to move this along. So yesterday we finished the defense case. The prosecution said they had 4 or 5 witnesses. We'll see how long that takes. The defense astutely stated the state's time has been mushy, or the state's estimate of time has been mushy. My estimates of time are always mushy. So A, I appreciate the shade, and B, I understand what it means to have your time be mushy because I live here. I live in mushy time, but we all live here now. We all live in mushy time. It was a 3-week trial and we're in week 6. We're in week 6. After the rebuttal trial ends, the court will have the jury do a view of Moselle. I'm going to talk to you a bit about how that works after the intro. And I do need to say, and thank you to all those on Twitter who made this joke too, because I'm here with you. I think we have a new definition of what you up real bad means. I think after yesterday's testimony, that phrase has now been indelibly defined and burned into all of our memories the way, if you know, you know. If you know, you know. All right, let's roll the intro. Let's wait for court to get back. Gosh, I appreciate this court's sense of time. Some days you just need it, and I appreciate it. And I appreciate all of you law nerds. It's almost time for court.
Hey there, I'm Emily D. Baker, the internet's go-to legal analyst, breaking down the legal side of the pop culture and entertainment stories we can't stop talking about. I'm a big fan of the cursey words. I've been a licensed attorney for over 17 years, but this is not legal advice. This is where the law nerds unite to talk about facts, not Let's get into it.
Do you all have a different definition of that word now? Do all of you now have a different definition of shit you up? Do we all have a different definition? I think that we do. Oh, we're inside of 8 minutes. YouTube is going to be like, you said curse words. I'm working on it, y'all. We're going to redefine what cursey words mean. It's really, everyone needs to just breathe YouTube. It's fine. I am coming in with hot water and my I have questions mug. Also, for those of you wondering, the mugs, the limited edition Valentine's Day mug, it goes away tonight. So if you have not signed up for Law Nerd Alerts and gotten your discount at lawnerdshop.com, maybe do that. Go to lawnerdalert.com. You can get your discount for the Law Nerd Shop. You can sign up to be kept in the loop weekly on what's going on, videos you might have missed, quick bits, when they are released, and all the things. But also a discount for the shop. And today's the last day to get that Law Nerd Love mug. So all the things. So cheers from Middle Tennessee with hot water and lemon. It's good. We need it. All right, let's talk about a jury view because that's what I've been getting the most questions about, and that's what I've seen the most questions about. I have one more warning. To remind you of. Here's the thing. Hear me, chat. Hear me, internet. Whatever is in the Netflix documentary is not evidence. I'm sorry, but it's not evidence. I'm not sorry. I said what I said. It's not evidence. I know it has changed a lot of your opinions. That's fine. You're not on the jury. Just keep in mind that whatever you have seen in the documentary and what this jury has seen are different. So your background knowledge of the case and the jury's knowledge of this case might be different. Try to keep it in mind when we are looking at what this jury does, because there is a lot of information about this family that the jury does not have. It has not been cross-examined. It has not been presented in court. It has not been vetted. So while it might be real interesting information, I love the tea. It's not what this jury knows. And the jury isn't going to be taking any of that into account. And I know that that can be difficult when you know more and you're like, but I know more. I get it. I want the gossip too. I get it. I'm waiting till after the verdict. I'm not saying that you should. I'm not saying that you should. I'm just saying you've got to be able to keep two minds on it of what you saw in court versus what you saw in the documentary. And it's a very good exercise to then also say, has what I've seen outside of court changed my opinion? Has what I've seen outside of court changed my opinion of what's happening in court? And that is a very real thing to probe, because we're going to keep coming up against issues with the media and media presentation of information and what's going on in actual court. This is going to happen in the Idaho case, and we are going to fight for it not to happen in the Idaho case. I think the Idaho case, and I'll talk about this more after this case ends, I think the Idaho case is going to get even more restrictive in what the public can know to not contaminate a potential jury in that case. So with that, just a reminder, it is very interesting info. I get that it's interesting context. I have not watched it. I can't talk about what it is. It's interesting context. I deny none of you your interest and your entertainment value at all, but it's very different than what's going on in court. Passenger saying EDB drinking water and not coffee has me concerned. It's a fair concern. My trial house manager, Dr. B, forgot to buy coffee beans. So he's making a Starbucks run. He's like, so we're out of coffee beans. I'm like, and how are we, by we, I mean you, going to solve that problem this morning? So that said, do I think this jury could convict him based on everything that we've seen? They can decide what the facts are. They've been presented a tool mark expert. If they decide that the tool mark expert said these are family guns, who else has that opportunity? Right? If they decide that Alec lied about the kennels, I think that's been uncontroverted. He admitted to lying about the kennels. They can decide that it is a fact that he lied about the kennels because he knew that was the exact time that they were murdered because he murdered them. They can decide that. There are things they can decide this case on, but there are just as many, if not more, things they can decide that the state hasn't proven their case on. And there are also room for some juries to decide one way and some to decide the other way, and thus not be able to render a verdict. Very real possibility. I want to see what Judge Newman has to say. Oh, that's me. That was user error. I muted it.
Good morning.
It's me. I'm the problem. It's me, Judge Newman.
Before the jury comes.
Your Honor, we were informed this morning by the state there's potentially 7 reply witnesses. And before we get into that, we looked at the cases on reply, including State versus Prather, which is a 2020 case. And I want the court, and I want the state to understand, and we think many of these witnesses have already testified.
They think it's cumulative.
Very few new witnesses.
Well, you don't have to have new witnesses.
And they're being called to reply to the way we read the cases, new matters, new evidence, something. But and we have a right under the case law, State versus Watson.
They're trying to limit the prosecution's rebuttal, so it's not cumulative.
2003 case, 353 FC 620.
And they want proper. This is fair.
148 to sur rebuttal.
Proper rebuttal. Oh shit!
Rebuttal.
No.
So
You said a right to?
it's discretionary with the court.
That's what he said. He said a right to sur rebuttal.
I would submit to the court that under the criteria set out in this case, you would determine that if they raised new matters, that we have a right to respond to those. Now,
boy.
we're told that Dr. Riemer,
boy.
their pathologist, is going to testify. And if you remember correctly, Your Honor, and I've looked at the YouTube, that's all we can get at this point, which is a video of it. Dr. Riemer's previously testified that she did not believe this to be a contact wound to the head. I submit they're going to try to repeat that testimony or elaborate on that testimony, and that was the only issue that our pathologist raised, but he believed it was a contact wound.
That's not true.
She's already testified why it wasn't a contact wound.
That's not true.
It wasn't a contact wound to the head, and why. So are we going to have to get our pathologist back here to counter hers if she raises some new issue? Or perhaps Your Honor, I need 7 reply witnesses. It was 2, now it's 4, now it's 7.
No, it was 4 to 5.
A process has got to stop at some point. We're going to be here next week.
Yes, we might.
There are 2 expert witnesses that have already testified in this case. Now, one of them I would concede, Ken Kinsey, they're an appropriate reply witness based on Mr. Palmbeck's testimony yesterday. But the pathologist, again, to testify it wasn't a contact wound to the head.
She's allowed to rebut it.
To that. And some of these other witnesses, who all partner members, to testify what they do or do not remember about the night in question. Again, they've already asked them that on direct.
Poot wants it to stop.
In their previous testimony.
They're going to lose their rental to a wedding.
I just
wonder if that's part of
this has
it.
got to end at some point. We spent 2 weeks on financial, 2.5 weeks of the 6 weeks on financial matters. In my opinion, could have been done in a day. That's just my
that's
opinion.
your opinion.
But I'd ask the court, as we make objections,
I mean, I think they could have shrunk it down too.
to consider
Poot,
and maybe
I
even
agree.
proffer what they're going to put up before we get in front of the jury, so that we can, Your Honor, can
They're
make
not
an evaluation
required to proffer
before we start down that road for a half-a-day witness.
I don't think it's a terrible idea,
that
though,
may
but they're not required to proffer
add
it.
anything that they to the case. Thank you, Your Honor.
Your Honor, State's certainly aware of the scope of reply testimony as it relates to the pathologists. There are actually a number of issues on which their pathologists challenge the findings of Dr. Riemer, and she's here to explain why those conclusions are incorrect, including his reliance on particular factors, and why ultimately his conclusions are wrong. I think that's directly in the scope of reply testimony. My focus here on reply is not to just repeat testimony, but to focus on specific issues raised during the defense case, that specific witnesses have something that contradicts or puts that in the appropriate context, and that is our focus. We intend to move very expeditiously through that. But ultimately, as it relates to the pathologist, just like Kenny Kinsey, it relates specifically to the conclusions offered by the defense experts. It is not just mere repetition of testimony already received, but comment on factors identified by those defense experts and why those are incorrect.
Your Honor, briefly. Let's take Mr. Kinsey, for instance. There was testimony yesterday that our expert believes there were 2 shooters. Obviously, something that he was not asked. Obviously, something that's a new matter. Obviously, proper for reply.
Obviously.
There are minute details, perhaps, that will be, these witnesses will be questioned
The
about.
state gets a rebuttal case,
And simply
Poot.
because there might be
He's doing what he needs to do.
Get to go into everything. I mean, this is, again, this was an estimate, 3-week trial.
Yeah,
We're
it
now
was.
in week 6.
Yeah, it
This
is.
will go into week 7.
Yeah, it will.
Seems to me the state's position is let no dead horse go unbeaten. This has got to stop.
They have the burden of proof.
Thank you.
They're allowed to beat dead horses. It's annoying as fuck.
The defense, of course,
They run the risk of alienating the jury.
With Judge Price, at the time, we all agreed.
All right, give me
with that
one
estimate.
sec.
It was
We're
not
gonna-
just the state. I realize
We're going to switch over.
has the right and the opportunity to do appropriate
I wanna see the defense.
rebuttal evidence to a defense case.
They
and
do.
that will be the focus of the testimony here today.
Your Honor, the
not
right
wrong.
they have is the same right I have. It's the right you allow. I just want to make sure he hadn't got a right to
Poots.
do anything.
He does.
Thank you.
He has a right to a rebuttal. He has the burden of proof. So the rights aren't the same, Poot.
Certainly, the state cannot retry the entire case,
It's true.
but the state has the right to reply to,
Also true.
To contradict certain issues presented by the defense, or
Maybe you should take it as a
certain issues
compliment.
of credibility.
You poked holes
It
in
has to be
the
finely
state's case.
tailored, such that we don't create a situation where
Correct.
a court will be compelled to allow rebuttal,
Correct.
which is almost unheard of.
Sir rebuttal means the defense goes again, like in Depp v. Heard, but that was a civil
You
case. It's very
mentioned
different.
State v. Prather, that was my trial. I was a trial judge in that case in Lexington County,
He's like,
a murder case wherein I allowed reply testimony, actually by a SLED agent. The Court of Appeals in a 2-1 decision reversed the conviction. Then the Supreme Court reversed the Court of Appeals and reinstated the conviction that was obtained before me.
He's like, because I was right.
So it can be a controversial and contentious issue.
The judge is just like,
almost always is, because there has to be a limit to the back and forth.
yep.
I'm surprised to hear the number of reply witnesses that the state
Same.
says that it intends to offer.
7
I do
reply
not
witnesses.
know. The case is so complex. We've had so much testimony.
Yep.
I cannot sit here in advance and rule as to what would be appropriate and what not. I just have to deal with it on an issue by issue,
And that's what he's done the whole trial.
objection by objection basis.
That's what he's done the whole trial. We live here now. Yesterday they said
with that-
4-5, today 7.
So bring the jury.
All right, we have 7 reply witnesses. Hey, Dr. B, you're on speaker. Were you gonna
Wonderful.
text? I thought you were gonna text
Did I
me.
what?
I thought you were gonna text me. So I didn't.
I've texted you 4 times.
Oh, I didn't see it. Okay. That's on me. Thanks.
4 times.
Okay, thanks.
I am almost there.
All right. I'll put in the order. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Dr. B's like, I have texted you, motherfucker. What is wrong with you? Oh, my phone's on Do Not Disturb. That's my fault. They're bringing the jury. So here's where we're at. The state said that they have 7
Sure, thank you.
financial
Good
crimes.
morning. Day number 26. 26. You have heard the defense's case. Now the state gets an opportunity to reply. And you may call your first witness.
May it please the court, Your Honor, the state calls Ronnie Crosby.
Okay. Interesting recall. Is this just about Alec lying about the kennels? Because that would be dumb. Or at least I think that would be dumb. He already said Alec was a liar. Like, I don't know what more you want.
The testimony you give today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Thank you. You'll have a seat on the stand.
You might ask
You
about
would
the
state
secret
your name for the
conversation.
record and spell your last name, please.
I don't know, man.
Ronnie Crosby, Crosby.
Good morning, Mr. Crosby.
Good morning.
Just want to go over a few things very quickly in
Ronnie's
reply
like, I
to
played this
some
game
of the
before.
defense case. And the first thing I want to ask you is, you had previously testified about your close relationship with Paul. didn't
Here's
you?
Yes, I did.
the risk the prosecution
And
runs
over
is
the
just
years, did you ever
pissing
have
off the
Paul
jury
to ride around the property
a lot
with Paul,
with
hers
this.
or his?
And they have to be very mindful. If you
More
lose the
on my
jury, they'll
property,
hold it
but
against
some,
you, Creighton.
On one or more occasions at Moselle as well.
What, if anything, would y'all carry when y'all rode around the property like that?
Why? This is about Paul?
Yeah. It's about the weapons.
Yes, sir. This will be in specific response to the defendant's testimony and in his statements as well. I can be specific. I don't want to do a speaking response,
In front of this jury.
but I can ask another question and maybe put it in focus, Your Honor.
Okay.
All right. You heard prior testimony that you don't go around looking for hogs in the daytime because they're nocturnal from the defendant, did you not? Or are you familiar that that was what was said?
Objection, Your Honor, if it's based on what he's heard or seen.
Everybody found their objections.
I mean, is this a...
This is going to be great.
A comment made to him, or if we're going to delve into the appropriate way to hunt hogs day or night? I mean, this is not proper reply. I object.
It's not a proper objection either. It's speaking.
All right. You want me to...
Yeah, if you don't mind asking a question again.
Sure. All right. The first question is, Have you gone riding around the property with your property or the Moselle property with Paul before?
I have.
All right. And what, if anything, would y'all carry when you would go riding the property?
I believe the only time I rode with Paul was, would have been looking for hogs, and then more so on my property.
All right. And what, if anything, would you carry when y'all were looking for hogs?
Your Honor, riding with Paul on his property, not Moselle.
Objection is overruled.
Well, people who have hogs on their property, as a general rule, you would always take a rifle with you, be it day or night, because you never know when you're going to see hogs, and because they are such a nuisance, as I spoke to earlier in my testimony, you always want to be, prepared to shoot them. So you would generally have some type of rifle and with you, a long gun.
Objection, Your Honor, he's giving an opinion. He's not been qualified as an expert.
Objection is overruled.
All right. You've had plenty of experience in killing hogs on your property?
Yes,
This
I would
is gonna be
disagree with
very
Mr. Harpootlian,
feisty.
and I am pretty much an expert about killing hogs.
You've had plenty of opportunity to go hunting with Paul.
Objection, Your Honor. I apologize to the witness.
Oh my God, the
And you've had plenty of opportunity
grandstanding.
to go hunting with Paul or have him hunt on your property.
Today's gonna be
Yes, I've
feisty.
been with him, and he's been on my property many more times. I didn't go with him every time.
I'm
he was
here
on
for
my
the
property,
entertainment,
but
though.
That's the general rule, that you would have a rifle of some sort. Paul, as this jury's been told over and over, was fond of that 300 Blackout. I've been with him while he had it. I usually use some other type of AR framed.
Also, Ronnie
to shoot
Cosby's
hogs.
Ronnie
223.
Cosby's
Well,
response is
223
why you
or-
don't do
or,
speaking objections. He's like, I disagree with
6.5
Poot,
Creedmoor, which is on a AR-10 frame.
and he's right to.
Would, is it common, though, to carry your rifle and look for hogs in the daytime and to see hogs in the daytime?
Yes, you don't always see them. Sometimes night's better if you're using a night vision scope, but I've killed hundreds of hogs in the daytime riding. It's just something, because there's such a nuisance in the low country and really across the state right now and across the South, that we have a rule that you don't ride the property without a rifle, because you want to try to eliminate as many hogs as you can, and we also trap them.
To your observation, did Alec have a good relationship with the local law enforcement community?
My
That's a
observation
very
was,
good question.
had a very good relationship with, probably better than the rest of us, saving his father.
Wow.
Did you on multiple occasions go over in great detail Alec's original story as to what he did on the night of the murders?
On more than one occasion, we discussed his story, as I testified to, I don't know how many weeks ago that was, but it was a while.
And what, if anything, did the defendant tell you about whether or not he checked Paul and Maggie before calling 911?
These are good rebuttal questions.
My
Better than
understanding
a
of
lot
what
of
he
Creighton's
told me
other
was
cross,
that he
truly.
checked them before he called 911.
And was he clear on that point to you?
I don't think these are bacon hogs.
That was clear to me.
When was the first time you've heard the defendant's latest story admitting that he was in fact at the kennels minutes before the victims were killed?
I haven't watched all of this trial like a lot of people have, but when I heard that
Don't call us out, Ronnie.
Alec was taking the stand,
We thought it was
I
going to
believe
be
it
3
was
weeks.
last Thursday, I did set up my workstation so that I could watch his testimony, and it would have been
On the YouTubes?
when he told you that he was at the kennels was the first time that I'd ever heard that.
Did Alec ever tell
This
you
is going
that
to
he thought
Alec
the boat
didn't
case
just
had
lie to
anything
Sled.
do with the murder?
He lied to everybody. It's not because he was afraid of Sled. He was lying because he was distancing himself from the time. That's the point.
Consistent with what Alec told in his testimony, he specifically told me that, and told us that he did not believe that anyone on the boat had anything to do with it. I don't recall any other conversations with him related to the boat case, But he specifically did not believe, and I think that's what he said last week, that anybody on the
It
boat.
wasn't the
but as
kids on the
far as
boat. Social media
anybody
randos.
outside, there was a lot of speculation going on, but I don't remember ever discussing that with him. And
With him.
right, because we wouldn't know. I mean, everything beyond was, I don't know. It would have been speculation, but I didn't have a conversation with him about that.
Did you ever have a conversation with the defendant about Barrett Boulware needing money because of his illness?
And you're referring to, yes, I did,
Sorry,
I
y'all.
believe it would have been
That was
June
me.
of 2018. Barrett and Alec were what I consider to be very close.
Improper reply.
It's going to happen all day.
Mr.
Yes, sir. The defendant during cross-examination was specifically asked about this particular transaction, and
The
that we're
defendant
about to discuss.
testified. They're rebutting his testimony.
Mr. Crosby's testimony would be
I think
in response to
they
what
don't
the defendant
necessarily need to
said
rebut it all, but they're
about,
going to.
the money, and in as much as he tried to imply that, well, Barrett kind of owed me money anyway, as justification for him stealing money from one of his best friends.
He did not ask him about a conversation he had with Mr. Crosby about that money. This isn't proper reply. This is going
Speaking
off on another
objections.
tangent.
Overrule the objection.
Can you tell us about
The judge is going to shut down these speaking objections at some point.
Yes, if my year's wrong, but I believe, because I didn't know exactly what you were going to ask me, and I can go back and look at documents, but I'm sure it's in one of these exhibits when
And this is the
that
worry.
occurred, the materials that
If you
Ms.
rehash
Seckinger
it too
put
much,
in.
you lose the jury.
I believe in June of 2018, Barrett, who was a good friend of Alec's, a lot closer to me. I think they were, in my perception, very close friends. But I had become friends with him and had done a couple of real estate transactions with him. That summer, I received a call from his son-in-law. Barrett was in the Mayo Clinic with stage 4 colon cancer.
Shit's out of the horse now, Poot.
Objection's overruled.
I do know for a fact that he was in the Mayo Clinic
Jessica, it could make Poot look
suffering,
bad, but
being treated for stage 4 colon cancer.
they
And
could
I
hold it
received a
against
call
the prosecution
as
as
to
well.
whether I could help
And the judge.
Barrett financially.
Your Honor, hearsay, a call.
Objection's overruled.
Make it seem like the prosecution
Because
is
his
just
wife did
belaboring
not
the
have
point.
enough money to stay. Barrett had some waterfront lots.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay. All this material came from somebody else.
It's not necessarily true, and it's not offered for the truth.
I do know this from firsthand knowledge, Mr. Waters. I had
Ronnie's
already
not happy
bought
either.
a lot from him, but anyway, he had a lot that he asked if I would buy so that they would have money to be able to, for his wife to stay down in Jacksonville while he was receiving
This
cancer
is giving
treatments.
context to who
And
Alec was
I had a
stealing from.
conversation with Alec about that.
Tell us about the conversation you had with Alec about that, please.
I just told him, man, it's bad. Barrett's looks like he's going to die, and he did die in September of that year.
This is while Alec is stealing money from him.
And he acknowledged it, and he said that it was good what
This
I
is
was
necessary.
doing for Barrett, because he knew that he was in bad financial shape and obviously bad health.
And you're obviously a member of this law firm, and your review of the records as all of this came to light, did that conversation take place around the time that the defendant was stealing some of Barrett's money?
Yes,
The defendant opened
through
the door
this
for this
investigation that
He
y'all heard about
testified.
into the financial stuff starting in early September of 2021, we started going through a lot of files, and as part of that process, somewhere I determined that in June of 2018, I believe, and I can't tell you the exact figure, but I believe it was a $70-something thousand insurance check that came to the firm on behalf of Mr. Boulware that didn't go through the firm. It was just Alec took it that same month that we had that conversation.
Well,
And
we've
then
gone
later
through a
there was
lot of
some
the
more money
financial
taken
crimes.
after he died.
This is the context that Alec is stealing from a dear friend while he's dying of stage 4 colon cancer, and his wife is having to sell their property to be able to take care of him while he is dying. That's
Show
the
you what's been marked
context.
as Exhibit
Not that Alec
575.
stole the money, it's the circumstances
States 575,
and
see if you
who
recognize
he
that.
stole it from.
Is that David, is that one of the sled agents?
Do you not recognize him?
Is that David Williams?
Well, I'm asking you.
I believe that's David Williams.
Okay. Your Honor, this time I'd offer States 575 and evidence.
Why?
Section relevance.
What is the
That's a
relevance?
proper objection.
The defendant specifically testified that when he had that initial interview with David Owen on June 8th, as he manufactured his decision to lie about such a crucial fact,
Oh, shit.
it was because he thought that David Williams was the guy interviewing him. This is simply a picture of David Williams.
Oh, shit.
The jury can assess the legitimacy of that claim.
Your Honor, I object. Never, ever said David Williams. He said David.
Yeah, he did say David Williams.
That's the record.
No, it's not.
Objection.
Never said it was that guy.
Yes, he did.
It's admitted over objection.
Can I have the only, please?
He said that. He said, I thought it was David, the one who prosecuted Alexander or whatever, and I thought it was the same person. And he did say David Williams.
That's who you recognize as David
Go
Williams?
back to the YouTubes and watch it, Poot.
Yes, I didn't know him. I got to know him through this investigation, and I do believe he was the agent that was involved in the
Alexander.
case with Chief Greg Alexander that was referenced.
Clearly not David Owen, though, correct?
To me, it's clear.
Well, that's not David Owen.
Have you ever tried cases with Alec?
Stop while you're ahead.
I handled a lot of cases with Alec. I believe the only case I tried to jury with Alec was actually here in this courtroom.
Did you observe him being able to get emotional during that closing argument?
Yes, as a couple months ago when we talked and you asked me what kind of lawyer Alec was.
If he
and I
said,
told you he was a good lawyer.
if he said a different
one of the
David
things that
and
I
they
think I
said
explained
David
to you was
Williams and
that
he answered, it still
He
counts.
was a theatrical type presence in the courtroom and he could get very emotional
Theatrical
doing
type
closing
presence.
arguments in front of a jury.
Like Poot. Like his
Thank you.
testimony.
Please answer any questions the defense may have.
So,
I hate to go here, but let's talk about hog hunting, which I know nothing about, okay?
You might not want to go there then.
I've been here so long, I think I probably do need to learn how to hog hunt. But I guess my first question is this. Did you ever ride Moselle with Alec? Did you ride around Moselle with Alec?
Ronnie Crosby's not going to be pushed
Probably,
around on the stand.
I know I dove hunted there, so I believe I rode on a Ranger, but I don't ever remember doing much riding with Alec at Moselle. But I know I dove hunted there, and sure I rode in a Ranger or some type of ATV with Alec, but I don't have a
Well,
specific.
when you're riding around dove hunting, you got a gun with you, right?
You would?
Would you take a shotgun to hunt dove?
Yes.
Would you take an AR weapon too?
No.
Why?
You're not shooting a bird with
I
an
mean, them
AR.
hogs are out there, right?
Well, they don't usually come in a dove field when you're shooting dove. So I don't know. You just wouldn't, Mr. Hartpootlian, typically. I mean,
But daytime, you're riding around the property, you got a shotgun. You got a slug in that shotgun, or you using birdshot?
Birdshot
you
comes in a
shoot,
slug,
birdshot.
doesn't
Okay.
it?
So if a hog came up, nothing you could do.
if a hog came into a dove field with a bunch of dove hunters,
Well, maybe
they
you're
would
on your
shoot
way.
at him regardless.
Maybe you're on your way to the dove field.
This
You
is
don't-
the
dove
most
field's not right next to the house. is it?
preposterous hypothetical.
Yes, it's right within a few hundred yards.
Bordered by the swamp?
The swamp's on one end of it, yeah.
Okay. And where do the hogs live during the day primarily?
Well, they can live in a swamp, they can live in a bay, you know, it could be anywhere, but largely in the swamp.
The swamp. So a hog could have come out of that swamp.
Yes.
I
You were
mean,
unarmed.
what?
As I said,
Not
if a
unarmed
hog
with a
came in a
shotgun.
dove field near somebody dove hunting, they would probably shot it with birdshot.
Though the bird shot will
Would
just
that kill a
piss it
hog?
off.
If it was close enough, but unlikely.
But unlikely. So you have, in fact, ridden
Oh my
around
God.
Moselle without a gun to kill a hog, appropriate gun to kill a hog.
Well, yes, if I was going over to the dove field, I wouldn't have one.
But you've never ridden as Paul and Alec did that afternoon, just looking at different, like where deer, what do they call them? Where they plant stuff for deer?
Food plots?
Yeah. Or looking around at how
The
these
point that he's
fruit
trying
trees
to
were
get
doing. Remember
to, and I get it, but it's just,
Snapchat
he can
video?
argue it.
I've never done
He can
that
argue
with
it.
Alec, and that I recall,
Is
but
what
I could
guns
have in
Alec
the
and
past,
Paul
but
had
I
when
don't
they
have a
rode
specific
around.
recollection.
But they were
Or
riding
where
around
they
at
planted some
dusk.
corn for, I guess used corn for deer and ducks?
You
And
do,
riding
but you
around
don't
at
put them in
dusk
the
is
same spot.
different.
No, I get that. One would be near a pond or in a pond or around a pond.
Correct, they had a duck pond.
Right, and then the others would just be out where the deer might come out and try to feed, right? Look, we don't need to go there.
Yeah, I don't think, yeah.
Okay, but you've never rode around like that with them, looking at different plantings and that you remember.
I don't have a specific recollection of doing that with Alex.
Okay,
there.
but
It's just
and
getting
would you-
to
you're not
what
telling this
Alec was
jury that
carrying
they
that
would not
night.
do, they would do that with, without a blackout. They could. I mean, would it bother you or offend you or
He was talking
scare
about
you that
dove
you've been
hunting.
riding around the property during the daytime without the blackout?
No, I was answering questions about what's normal if you're looking for hogs or if we're just riding my property. I mean, most people carry a gun, but no, I have no idea what they had with them.
He's like, I was asking
And I
what
think
they did.
Alec testified they were looking for signs of hogs because you could come back. It'd be a lot easier to find those hogs at night, right? They come out more likely at night than they do during the day.
They can become nocturnal when they have a lot of pressure, but as I said before, we've shot a lot of hogs in the daytime. You
Sure.
can ride up on them and yeah.
But has anybody testified they were out looking to shoot hogs that afternoon?
He's like, I'm just answering what was asked.
I don't know what all the testimony's been in this
Okay.
trial.
All I'm saying is there seems to be some implication they would not ride around the property without an AR or some sort of blackout. You can't testify to that, right?
I cannot.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about what you heard from Alec the night of
Yes,
June 7th.
please.
You would agree with me that, well, let's ask it this way. What your practice is primarily personal injury, is that correct?
It is.
Catastrophic injuries.
Yeah.
Well, I handle a lot of catastrophic injury cases.
Cases, for instance, where a husband and wife are riding down the road and hit by a tractor trailer. And by way of example, maybe you could give me something more specific. Husband's killed, wife's severely injured. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Now, is it your experience in people who undergo, maybe they're not hurt, but their loved one is hurt, maybe killed, in that situation, that's a traumatic experience for the surviving person, correct? To see their loved one
Yeah.
killed?
Yes.
Okay.
So
And
he's
when
getting
you
to
sit down
Alec's
with those
trauma.
folks and begin to recount with
Good
them
questioning.
what happened that night. Oftentimes.
Very
I do
clever
the work like
questioning.
you do. Oftentimes, those folks misremember or get times wrong, or because they went through this very traumatic
Ah.
experience, and the closer to that
It's
experience,
compound.
the more likely they are to get some things wrong. Times, for instance. Is that your experience?
Compound.
They can, but I also find that people who have been involved in traumatic experiences try to be
Forthcoming.
try to be very accurate with the details because they know it's important to me representing them.
And typically, you don't go
That
out
was
to
a
the scene of the
clapback.
crime and interview, or the scene of the accident and interview them that night, do you? Typically?
Not in
Well,
a
typically you
personal
don't
injury
because,
case.
you know, you don't know that it's happened.
Well, sometimes in the old days, they used to do that, but they don't do that anymore,
That's what I
right?
called ambulance chases.
That would be
Pooh.
very rare.
They used to,
So you're seeing them in your office, weeks later?
It can be days, can be weeks.
Okay, and in that atmosphere...
No, leading's allowed. This
it's
is
a little more conducive
cross-examination.
to them being as accurate
It's
as possible,
fair
right?
questioning.
It
Ronnie's
is,
just not
but
gonna have it.
oftentimes we also have the benefit of recorded interviews when there's a catastrophic injury. Typically, the highway patrol will try to interview people as quickly as they can, and they will. We oftentimes have it on video off a dash cam or sometimes body cam, but and a lot of times written statements.
And written statements from witnesses that saw it happen.
Correct.
And so when you interview those people, they have the benefit of reviewing
Just
whatever
looking
you
at the
have
jury.
to help them get a better recollection of what happened, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So the instance you're talking about where Alec
No, you're talking
told
about.
you he turned him over before he made the 911 call, whatever it was, I'm not quite sure. Before, I think is what you said. If that would be inconsistent with something he says later on, after having reviewed other people's statements, looking at video, that would not be unusual in your business. I think you just said it would not be unusual, correct?
I don't think that's exactly what he said, Poot.
Look, strike that, strike that,
You're
strike that.
trying to take me somewhere that you probably don't want to.
Oh, no, I think I want to. And
the question.
withdraw the question. Let me ask you this question. Maybe this gets to the meat of the matter here.
That was so
Have you had to come out of
compound.
pocket to pay back the money he stole?
Yes.
Yes, and if you,
How much?
I,
And don't tell me you don't know.
well, we're still counting, Mr. Hartboot.
Well, how much have you paid so far?
We have had to borrow millions to pay back.
No, how much
business
have you
to-
had to come out of pocket?
Well, when you borrow it, you got to pay it back, and I couldn't tell you how much has exactly been paid back as of we sit here today. But yes, and if you're implying that I would come in here and somehow shade truth in any way because of that, I would take high offense with that, Mr.
I'm not
Hartboot.
concerned about your high offense. Are you angry at him for stealing your money?
I have no feeling one way or the
I
other.
don't have any feeling about Alec Murdaugh betraying you and stealing your money. I admire you. I don't know that I can look beyond that.
Objection, Your Honor.
You said you were honored to
Sustained.
represent
If that a
him.
question, the jury is to disregard the argument.
You are not angry with Alec
Yo,
Murdaugh?
there's a trial.
I have had anger with him, extreme anger, Mr. Hartpootlian, because of what he did to my law firm, my partners, my client,
What's
his
Ronnie gonna
clients,
say?
our clients, what he did to his family, what he's did to so many people. Yes, I experienced a lot of anger.
And
But you
then-
can't walk around with anger. You have to find a way to deal with it and move forward. And I
Ronnie.
have done that. And if you suggest, you are dead wrong. If you think I've come in here and told this jury something because of money, when we're talking about two people who were brutally murdered, then you're headed in the wrong direction.
Do you think he did it? Do you
I don't
think
have an
shit.
opinion. I don't have the benefit of the materials you have.
Well, let me ask you this.
Oh, shit.
You're angry with him, stole millions of dollars from your firm. You admit your firm's not even called the Murdaugh firm anymore, right?
It is not. I don't admit that I'm angry right now. I told you I've gotten away from that. I don't have any feelings because you can't walk around with anger. I have been very, very angry about it because of what he's done. And he did it in a very callous way, a very deceitful way.
And you carry no, I'm sorry, maybe I just saw some anger there. Were you angry?
No, you keep trying to push a question and don't want to accept my answer, which is what it is.
That you've just given your zen, your nirvana, your whatever the...
Your Honor, objection.
Mr. Hartpootlian,
Forgiven him?
I came to the scene of these murders to support my partner. I was there. I saw things that
He
hadn't
was in
even
that
been
room.
talked about in this courtroom. I was there.
He had
I
blood
love
on
Paul
him.
very much. I thought I knew who Alec was. I did not. And it's hard you might not understand, but it's hard to walk around with anger, and hard to even walk around with it when it's with somebody who you didn't know and didn't understand. So you might have be that way, but you know, I've got to function, I've got a family, I've got to move on with life.
Were you aware that he went to rehab in 2017?
I was not, other than what was said by Alec in this courtroom.
You never were aware he had a drug problem?
I was unaware.
Okay. Sort of,
And if I would have been known, I would have tried to help him.
Oh,
you indicated that he
My
could be
God.
emotional in trying a case, correct?
He could be. He was theatric, much like his father and grandfather had a courtroom theatrics, and he could be emotional.
Any of your other partners that way? Johnny Parker?
No, Johnny's quite the opposite. Johnny's very,
Laconic, I believe, is the best way to
yeah,
describe it.
he doesn't show emotion.
Nobody else in your firm was theatric or emotional?
Like you?
Not to Alec's level.
You don't know any other lawyers in the state that go to that level?
he didn't say that.
You're asking me a question right now. I don't know. You might yourself. I don't know. I don't know what other lawyers do. I'm usually trying cases against defense attorneys, so I don't get to see plaintiffs' lawyers anymore.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you for, well, let me ask you one last thing. This Bullware guy that he stole all the money
Ooh,
from,
rude.
Mr. Bullware, remember?
This
Yes, I
Bullware guy,
remember.
How much money did you steal from him? Do you remember?
his
He
friend.
stole 70-something thousand in June of 2018. Mr. Bulwer died in September, I believe, of 2018, and I believe another 270-something thousand after Mr. Bulwer's death sometime in or around February of 2019.
Have you and your partners paid Mr. Bullware's estate or his folks back?
Yes, I met with them personally.
Okay. And even though it's cost you your firm and it's cost millions of dollars to you, you have forgiven him?
He didn't say he forgave him.
I
He
didn't
did not
say I
say
forgave
that.
him.
You're just not angry about it
He
anymore?
said
I
he's
said I
not
have
walking
no
around with hate in
feelings.
his heart.
And I had to work on that, Mr. Harpootlian. You know, when you go through what we've gone through, not only the trauma of losing people we loved in a double homicide, seeing the aftermath, and then learning that someone you worked with for more than 20 years had been stealing throughout a period of time and deceiving us, there's a lot of emotion there.
Yep.
And yes, it was bad in the fall of 2021, and I have
Don't cut him
found
off.
a way
You
to
asked the
have
question,
no feelings.
Poot.
It's not forgiveness, it's just I don't
You're
have
not
any
angry
feelings.
here today? You're not angry at him at all?
I'm not angry.
Okay.
If I raise my voice, it's only because of the implication
you.
that you were trying to
The
make out of it.
implication that you might not want to help him in front of this jury here today because, let me finish the question, because he destroyed your firm, he stole millions of dollars you had to pay back, he deceived you, all that's away and is not influencing your testimony here today at all.
It's not
If
influencing
you
his
answer that yes or
testimony.
no, then you can explain.
All those things happened, and it does not influence my testimony. I take the oath that I just took very seriously. And if you've got any indication that anything I said was inaccurate, I'll be glad to address it with you.
Well, the jury can judge that. Thank you.
Oh, that's an inappropriate comment. Today's fucking spicy. No, Creighton, no.
How long did you know
Stop
Alec?
it. Creighton, don't ask.
Since the late 90s.
End on that.
And
What?
knowing what you know now,
Oh,
was he
hi.
able to look you in your eye and lie convincing to you?
If you want to know
day
what
in
I'm
and
yelling
day
about,
out?
you can go turn on YouTube.
He did.
And was he able to look juries in the eye and display emotion?
That is not appropriate redirect.
Holy
And
shit.
it's leading.
Objection sustained.
It is leading.
Mr. Harpootlian asked you about some of the things that you have gone through. And
Y'all, today's a spicy trial.
is your issue with Mr. Harpootlian's
Day
questioning
26.
the implication that you would come in and shade things in front of this jury?
Objection, leading.
What
No,
is your
that's-
concern with Mr. Harpootlian's questioning?
Yep,
of
that's
you?
fair.
Can you express that to the jury, please?
That's fair.
All that he just went through with you, sitting up on the stand, having to deal with this, what is your problem with what he was trying to say?
Well, I fortunately, well, to start with, I took an oath to tell the truth. But we as lawyers also have oaths and obligations to a court. And it goes a lot deeper than just that oath. We are bound by rules of professional conduct, ethical rules that I take very seriously
Dr.
as a
Riemer
lawyer.
brought a cold brew.
To my knowledge, I enjoy a very good reputation as far as being a person of integrity. And that's what I took issue with, is him attempting, because he cannot impugn my integrity.
Attempting to impugn my integrity is what he said.
Would you take a 22 if you went out looking for hogs?
No, piss it off.
Possibly a .22 Magnum, which is a long rifle.
Which is a long rifle?
Yes.
You take a long rifle, not a pistol, is that correct?
Oh my God.
Yeah, I would never, I'm not a good shot with a pistol, but I would never take a pistol.
And what was Paul's favorite gun for shooting hogs with?
I knew he always had a .300 Blackout, but I don't know if he shot him with anything else.
Thank you, nothing further.
Yeah, I would
Further.
let it go. Make like Elsa.
I'm sorry, Your Honor, I just can't leave this alone.
Oh, Ronnie, we see you. We
Is
see
the
you.
.300 Blackout that's in evidence his favorite? The .300 Blackout with a thermal scope on it.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Step down.
That was fiery. No, we definitely got into
Sorry,
argumentative.
next witness.
Your Honor, the state calls Dr. Riemer.
We definitely got into argumentative testimony and argumentative questioning, but Ronnie's a lawyer who was holding his own. I would have let it go too. He could have objected, but let Ronnie clap back at him.
You swear or affirm the testimony that you give today will be the truth, the whole truth.
All right,
and
back
nothing
to
but the
Dr.
truth,
Riemer.
so help you God. I do. Thank you. Can you have a seat on the
That
witness
was
stand?
spicy. I don't think Alec expected Ronnie to
It's
come at
Dr.
him.
Ellen Riemer, R-I-E-M-E-R.
And just to advise the gallery, if everybody could seal the monitors, please, and the media be advised of that.
Wow, that was spicy. This is not going to get that spicy. Yeah, Poot's mad. I don't think this will get
Dr. Riemer,
quite
I
as
want to move to
spicy.
this. Yes.
I don't think this will get quite as spicy, but Ronnie was like, look,
And Dr. Reamer,
I
I
have
don't
to
know if
move
I'm
on.
necessarily even going to put them up on the screen.
I
I am
believe
going to
him.
show you some
I
images.
believe
I know
him.
the jury have seen these, and I don't want to belabor the point, and I want to move quickly. But just very quickly, you've been previously qualified as an expert in this trial in forensic pathology. Is that correct?
Yes,
And you've done how many autopsies? Remind the jury, please.
around 5,500. Since I was last here, I've done a few more.
I can't see a monitor anymore.
Okay. I haven't put anything up yet.
go sit down, Poot.
You actually
Go
conducted
sit
the
somewhere.
autopsies of Paul and Maggie in this case?
He'll tell
Yes,
you when
I
he's going to
did,
put up an
both
exhibit.
of the autopsies at the request of the Colleton County coroner, who called MUSC Forensic Pathology, requesting autopsies on 2 individuals that died under his jurisdiction. I was not asked by the prosecution to perform an autopsy. It was an independent autopsy.
Your autopsy is independent. You're not hired by the prosecution or law enforcement or anything
No,
like
it's
that?
just at the request of the coroner.
All right. You've had a chance to hear the testimony of the pathologist for the defense that testified yesterday?
Yes.
All right. I want to ask you a couple of general questions and then move specifically to some of the conclusions that individual reached. But just very quickly, with skin tags, can you tell me the reliability of that in determining directionality just as a general matter?
Yeah, well, we look at these things, but just like every other thing at, finding at the autopsy,
Can't look at
we
one
take
thing.
it in the context. So sometimes skin tags support your findings, and sometimes they're not really so reliable. So, skin tags don't tell you necessarily the direction of a wound, especially going through very soft tissue.
And I'm going to show you a couple of exhibits
Well, that's
that have
helpful
been
to know.
previously introduced in this
Did that-
particular case. And try to be very careful with these.
You guys, I'm going to put up a poll about Ronnie. I want to know if you think he lost his cool in a way to make it look like he's too angry to Alec, or whether it was an appropriate response to Poots pushing.
As exhibits, defense exhibits, 159, 160, and 161. And if you could take those out and just tell me if you recognize those. And again, please be mindful of the direction in which those images are presented.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Yes, I've seen these.
All right, and what are those images of?
They're autopsy photographs of Maggie.
All right, you heard the testimony of the defense pathologist who testified yesterday that the directionality of the injury to the side of Maggie's head with the associated injury to the breast and the abrasion actually was coming from the top down as opposed, and I say top down as if somebody's standing upright, as opposed from going towards the bottom of the body up, correct?
Yes, that's
All
what I
right,
said.
and can you please look at the images that you have and explain to the jury your conclusions and why that defense pathologist is incorrect, and who didn't conduct the autopsy to begin with, why he's incorrect?
Okay. Do you want me to show the photos?
You can, and let's just go ahead and put them up on the screen. So I'll take them. And if you could step down, please, if that's okay with your honor. And first, I'm going to show defense exhibit 160. Are we secure? You good? All right. All right, and that's defense 160. And Dr. Riemer, if you can again explain to me your specific findings and how they relate to the testimony from yesterday.
Yes. So we have the abrasion on the left shoulder, clavicle area, and then we have an entrance defect in this left side of the face. We can see a hole there. It's a hole. And there was a defect in the left temporal lobe of the brain, which was included in my autopsy report.
They're going to try to move the
That could only
monitors.
have happened from that being an entrance wound.
Okay. And you mentioned during your testimony the concept of a diastatic fracture. Does that in any way relate to your conclusion in this regard?
Yeah, well, a diastatic fracture is
Skylar, I'm gonna answer this at a
when
break.
there's a separation of
have some
skull
coffee.
bones along suture lines which solidify during childhood. And usually it takes a lot of intracranial pressure to fracture a skull along the suture line.
All right. And does that relate to the conclusion that this had to be an entry wound?
Yeah, well, that's a finding. That doesn't prove that this is an entrance wound, but what I do, I have a path through the left
CB,
temporal
the type
lobe,
of skin tags they're
and,
talking about and the naturally occurring skin
there's,
tags
you know,
that you're likely
and
talking
that
about are
was
different.
That it was
They're
associated
talking
with
about
the diastatic fracture because of
a
the
pulling
increased
of the
pressure.
a particular
One of the
pulling
things you're
of
telling
the
this
skin.
jury is you who actually,
Objection leading.
were you actually able to observe a hole associated with an entry wound when you physically performed this autopsy?
Yes, I physically performed the autopsy,
She's
and
like, I was there.
the way I determine direction is I have a hole below the left ear, which went into the brain, and so that's not going to happen in the opposite direction. And I understand that people can look at pictures, that's like a two-dimensional
She's like, pictures are
view,
different.
But
Oh,
doing the
let me get that
autopsy
break.
makes certain
Get that out of the break.
information available to the pathologist that is not available to an individual not performing the autopsy. And I had that information in my report, which was not, which was, I guess, overlooked.
Overlooked by the defense
Right,
pathologist.
yes, I'm sure.
All right. I'm going to show you now Defense Exhibit 161.
Attorneys are sworn by the court when they take an
There's
oath
some
to become
testimony
attorneys.
from the
But
defense
when they
pathologist
testify, they're
about,
still going to take a second oath in front of the jury.
Trying to determine directionality from this particular image. And can you please
Yeah.
tell the jury why that pathologist is wrong?
All right, well.
Tell us why they're
you know,
wrong.
When we have tears of the skin, and this is a lot of tears of the subcutaneous tissue, especially in the very soft area of the body where there's a lot of fat. There's a lot of stretching, and it doesn't necessarily, we can move the tissue of the breast, and sort of, you can even get the points to going to a different direction. This is not very impressive. It's not even really worth observing any of the
Jamie, I saw your question in the chat about evidence
it's
being
really very
unsealed.
nonspecific,
Some will
and I
not
think
be
He has a very good
unsealed.
imagination.
Some of these things will
for,
remain sealed,
for seeing
which
that
is
in this.
fine, I think.
And it's, skin tags can be there.
I really do
Sometimes
think
they
it's fine.
support your findings, sometimes they don't support, but they don't take the place of
There are some
determining
things
the
the public
path
doesn't
of
need to
the
see.
wound by actually following it through the body.
I'll show you finally what's been marked as defense 159, and is this also a representation, sort of the hole that you determined and were able to physically observe as a entrance wound on the side of Maggie's head?
Yes.
All right, let's talk a little bit about Paul.
I will say hi when we're not talking
you
about
heard the
bodies, Angie.
defense pathologist and their subsequent expert talk about there being a contact wound to the top of Paul's head. Is that correct?
That's what he said.
All right, and you, of course, have already testified during your direct testimony that there's no way for this to be a contact wound, but now you have specific observations about the defense conclusions.
Well, I didn't think it was necessary for me to point out every
Minute detail?
physical feature of the wound that demonstrates that the entrance was to the top of the left shoulder and then went into the left side of the head before exiting the top of the head. Now, before I go on, I do want to say that I agree with the book that keeps being brought up, that when there is a contact shotgun wound to the head,
You are welcome
there's
to like pooch.
massive gas expansion within
I'm not
the
telling anyone
cranial
to not
cavity,
like pooch.
within the skull. And what that does, it doesn't just create a hole with some, bones. I understand this was like the most severe thing you have ever seen. And you probably can't imagine that the damage to the head could be any worse. But a contact shotgun wound to the head with the associated gas expansion to the skull would not have,
Left the
his
face.
face was
Yeah.
basically intact. We would have had tears of the skin, and his eyes would have been either displaced from the orbital bones.
Oh, that's a
the
very
orbital
good
bones were
point.
intact. Anytime there's massive gas buildup within the cranial
It would
cavity
push them
from
forward.
a contact shotgun wound to the head, which
very
the
fair
book does
point.
say is when we have the worst gas expansion, the entire face, he would have not even had a face left. I mean, I know what you saw was awful, and it was absolutely awful, but the damage would have been a lot worse. He would have had, like, the sides of his head would have gone, and he would have had, his entire face would have been split open, because there's no way all of that gas expansion could occur and not cause fractures of these delicate bones in the face. His forehead was even still there. So,
Those are fair answers.
I agree with the book that a contact shotgun wound would cause severe gas expansion and damage to the head. What we have here is not consistent with a contact shotgun wound to the head. Damage to the head would have been much worse, even though this was already horrible. Okay, that being said, there are photographs. Okay.
Yep, and I'm going to put up what's already been admitted into evidence as States 486.
She was the one who did the autopsies.
And if you could,
The point of this
Doctor, just
testimony
talk
is
a
to
little bit about this
contradict
image
the
as it illustrates
defense's
what you're
expert
talking about
from
with the
yesterday.
face, but also, if you could, we'll go ahead and talk about with the face, and then I want to talk about the shoulder a little bit as well.
There's no skin, like, torn apart of his face. His eyes
So
are
she's
still
saying
in
why
the
it
correct
wouldn't have been a
location.
contact wound coming
it's hard
down,
to
why it would have
imagine
gone up
that,
this.
anything can
up.
be worse than a hole at the top,
That-
right side of the
that
back
way.
of the head. But in my 20-plus years of experience doing autopsies and seeing contact gunshot contact shotgun wounds to the head, which are associated with massive gas
She's just
expansion. in the
eminently
skull.
qualified.
His entire face, he would have had tears. The eyes would have been either hanging down or lost, blown out. There's no way that these features are consistent with a contact shotgun wound to the head.
That makes sense.
Now, there's been some,
He's going
there
through
was
the
some
book.
discussion by the defense pathologist about shaving the top of the head for stippling or checking for stippling. And can you comment on the necessity of that in your actual autopsy that you conducted? For
So,
the jury?
he also said that sometimes we actually don't see the soot, but he said, if Dr. Riemer shaved the area, she would have had the opportunity to see the soot. So suppose I didn't see soot, or I did see soot, first of all, I'm confident there would not have been soot, because the features of this wound are not consistent with a shotgun wound to that location. First of all, the damage to the head and face would have been far more severe than it was. And then also, the wounds to the shoulder and left side of the cheek have all the features of entrance wounds.
All right. And one of the things discussed by the defense experts was sort of the
She is defending her
large
testimony,
sort of oblong
but
shape of the shoulder.
she
Can you
doesn't come across as
explain how that does
defensive
not
at
contradict
this
your
point.
findings of that shot coming this way, that we see this injury here?
And
I'm going
we've
to actually
seen-
put up Defense Exhibit 162.
we saw with like Dr. Hughes getting defensive in the Battle of the Experts. We're not seeing that with her. She's just
So we've got
re-explaining.
basically
And I like her demeanor with that.
oblong wound
It's a little
here,
cheery for
and
the
that's because
what she's talking about, but I
the
get that she
wound is
loves what she does.
entering at an angle along the top of the shoulder.
I find her easy to follow.
It's not hitting the shoulder at a perpendicular angle. So it kind of grazing along the top of the shoulder. Okay, now is this, okay. So, and actually, he said
Hope,
that
it's good to
the-
see you in the
pellets
chat.
are going down. Okay, well, if you look at it as an entrance wound, they're actually going up. So it depends where you're looking at it from. If he's thinking that this is an exit wound, that this is, that the end of the wound path, then it would look to him as if the pellets are going down. But we can see this is actually an entrance wound for a few reasons.
For everyone new to the
First of
trial, the
all,
court reporter
if it were an exit wound, do you
takes
remember all those
her
pellet exit
stenography
wounds on
verbally.
Paul's
So
left
that's what
arm
she's doing.
that came from the chest?
Oh, she's a teacher.
The pellets are not just going to stop in the shoulder. There's like no resistance there.
She's
the
in full
pellets are going
teacher
to
mode.
continue going until they exit the left side of the arm. Okay, so they don't just stop there. The reason they're there is that's because they started there. Okay. In addition,
I think
you see
Craig
all
needs
of
to be quick with
white
this.
material here on the edge
She's
of
explained.
the entrance wound. That's styrofoam packing material.
Ask your
that's
questions.
between the
Save it for
pellets.
rebuttal.
So the pellets are contained within wadding, and there's styrofoam packing material between. And that would never have been deposited there. So I did not think it was when I was telling you the direction, my determination of the direction of this wound. I did not have to necessarily, it was my expert, I'm an expert at determining, forensic pathology includes establishing the direction of wounds. And because of all of these things, this was my determination. Okay, now there's another feature of this photograph. Do you see that this is coming into the left side of the, this is what I determined, left side of the cheek, and we've got all sorts of abrasions around.
Poot's not gonna sit
It
down.
doesn't have
This is
the
Poot on the
classic,
offense.
What we saw
Poot's
on
gonna take up
Paul's
space in the
chest had
courtroom
that-
and try to
those little
demand
petals.
control of the
So we
courtroom.
knew that the wadding was starting to open up. But in this case, there was wadding that was probably open as well. So we have some pellets already starting
Until
to
somebody
come
objects
out.
and tells them to sit
they're
down,
not-
like he did to
It's not
Metters.
entering within the wadding, but the wadding is going along and entering them. And we have all this abrasion around the left side of the cheek, the chin neck area. And that's consistent with, we're not going to have that abrasion if it's coming out. It's going to push the skin out. We're not going to have an abrasion. So all that but even just common sense, we have that styrofoam packing material on the
Remember when
outside of the
Poot
arm.
objected to Metters and told him to
My
sit down?
determination, this went up
Well,
through the left cheek, out the right side of the top of the head. If it were a shotgun entrance wound, contact to the head, I don't care whether, there's no way his entire facial bones and skin, his ears would have been flopped down. There's so much gas expansion that the damage to his head would have been much worse. So that's based on my experience for doing this. And, I just don't know how, I didn't mention that styrofoam packing, but that's from when the pellets are coming in. And he said, oh, you can see they're going down. That's because he's looking from above. So but if you look at where I believe, and I determined by doing this autopsy that the entrance wound is, it's actually going up.
I like how she reminds the jury the autopsy I did.
And if, just logically, if this was an exit, the pellets wouldn't have just stopped there. They've got a huge amount of energy. They're going to continue through the arm and
They don't just make a U-turn?
Individual pellets. They wouldn't have all just been concentrated right there. So, we can use our powers
I want him to
of
ask her why
logic,
she
which I
didn't
think,
X-ray
we all have to
or further
to
scan the brain. I'm curious about that.
how this is an entrance wound that exited the right side of the top of the head.
Dr. Riemer, having specifically, and you can take a seat now, thank you very much. Having specifically addressed the
I don't know if the jury-
criticisms of the defense pathologist.
I don't know if the jury
in
is
your
still
expert
engaged
opinion, having actually done the autopsies in this case, is
this.
there any way that could have been a contact wound to the top of the head?
No.
All right. And having addressed the specific concerns of the and testimony of the defense pathologist as it relates to Maggie, is your conclusion still that the shot went in the direction as you described before this
Yes,
jury?
I disagree with his conclusions.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Riemer. Please answer any questions the defense counsel may have.
I thought the Maggie shot made more sense from the other pathologist. I understand why she says it doesn't, but it made more sense.
Dr. Riemer, good to
But
see you
I think
again.
the jury's
Hello.
awake after the fiery elocution this morning.
You took pictures, correct?
I took pictures. I wish I took more pictures now, but I took pictures.
I'm sorry.
Yes, I would have. I wish I took even more pictures.
So do we. So, you made notes, which you converted into an autopsy
Yeah,
report.
it's a standard operating procedure.
Yeah, no. But so, and that's done so that somebody else can look at
overanswer.
your work and see if they agree or disagree
Don't
with you. 'Cause
over-answer.
No, the notes are a work product for me while I'm preparing, doing my examination. I don't always, I take notes, I write numbers, but that is really for me so I can incorporate findings into an autopsy report that I'm going to write.
Yep.
And I don't write it the same while I'm at the table. I need to go away. Maybe I'm going to do it the next day, that night.
Back to 68 degrees this
But
morning.
it's not done. People say, oh, can I have a copy of the autopsy diagram? Well, these are not autopsy diagrams that are meant for other people to look at, and sometimes they're not even completely accurate because I mark things on the outside of the body that later on during the course of the autopsy I determine, I'm like, oh, well, that's what that is. And it may not be what I initially wrote down. But by the time the autopsy's over, I've put it all together. And that a
It's her stream of
diagram or notes do
consciousness.
not necessarily reflect everything, that I concluded.
But
You
she's...
still have your notes in this case?
I imagine they would be in the file, but as I told you, my notes are not
She's
necessarily
over-explaining,
the conclusion that I
which
came
I don't
to.
Did you
like.
produce them to the state?
I don't know what I did. I personally, if they were asked for, I'm sure I did.
Did you produce them to us?
No, I don't remember producing them at all. I don't have a request for those notes in my file.
But those notes would be your present sense impression as you're doing the autopsy, correct?
Well, they can have a lot of things written down on them.
But we don't know because we didn't get them, right?
Well, they're not important. What's important
Well,
is
she
they're
doesn't get to
my
determine
notes.
that.
They're for me. They're an
She doesn't
aid
get to
to the
determine
pathologist.
whether they're important or not is the thing.
So even if I thought something initially.
notes matter 'cause it makes
and
it
then
look like the
after I-
state's
while I
withholding
do the
things.
autopsy,
Even if they
by
don't
the time I
matter
get to
for a
the end, it
determination.
could disagree. I don't necessarily go back and change the diagram.
I don't know why she's
I'm not-
over-explaining.
It's my work product. It's for me to aid me in writing my autopsy report. It's not for public view. It's not a
That's not for you to
statement
decide,
of
though.
my conclusion.
That's for
Okay.
them to decide.
Did you review those notes before your testimony previously or today?
No.
Okay, so you just go with your report.
Yeah, that's what she
Well,
said.
I reviewed my report, correct.
Right, but you don't go back and look at your notes.
No.
That's what she said.
So, let me ask you some basic
is
questions
judgmental,
here.
but I'm not
You
mad at
previously
it.
testified that the muzzle of the shotgun for this wound here that goes through his neck and out the top of his head was about 3 feet away.
That would be about right.
Okay. Now, you're familiar with this page from, I believe you've described the...
Oh, yes, I've seen it many times.
Mind you,
Okay.
she just
And
sat
as
in
you
court and
see,
watched Coots
the gas
sparring
comes
with
out,
Ronnie.
right?
So I
in
imagine
the first
she's
shot.
a little on
Yes.
edge.
And then, actually, there's sort of a
Which is a
blowback
hard thing
of
to
gas as the...
let go.
As we can see right here, the projectile, which is the pellets, are extruded from the barrel, right? I mean, the gas pushes the pellets out.
Well, there's gas expansion, and that helps propel the pellets, yes. I agree with the book. This was not a contact shotgun wound to the top of the head.
Okay, well, the book doesn't say that, but what the book does say is that
Well, your
as
representation of the
pellets
book,
come
reading it
out,
as a
at
non-professional.
some point, they begin to, the container opens and the pellets expand or move out in a pattern, a circular pattern. It becomes bigger as the further away you get, correct?
Yes, and that's what we have here.
Okay,
But this is actually
Don't
demonstrating
over-explain.
specifically a
Just stop.
contact shotgun wound to head. But we do have splaying outward of the pellets. We can see on the left shoulder, they're fairly clustered together because they're
All the
first
experts do
starting to
this.
be released from the
All
body.
the experts do
And
this. They wanna
did spread
over-explain.
out.
They don't wanna
We
just
have
answer
some
yes
of
or
them
no.
down in the neck, some of them in the brain, and so they are spreading out. I don't see how, yes, it's a respected treatise, but this is specific to a contact shotgun wound to head.
This
This
is?
is what this is describing.
And that's not
Really?
what she's describing.
Well, it's fine, it doesn't matter. I can look at my photos. I can look, if you're going to talk about theory, the photos.
Doctor, Your Honor, I would ask you
To complete his
to
answer.
tell the witness to be responsive. She is going on a diatribe, excuse me, I'm asking the court to instruct her to answer the question as specifically as she can. She goes off on tangents and...
He's
and-
arguing
I'm
now.
sorry, I'm sorry.
No.
You may continue answering the question.
You remember what the question was?
No.
No, that's your question.
Is this series of shots from the book depicting a contact wound? I think that's what I understood you
Yes.
said. Yes, okay.
She is over-explaining.
If you step down here, show me, please, where the contact is with the body or the head. Here, let me give you...
She said there isn't a contact wound.
Well, the contact would be at the first area.
Right here?
Yes.
Well, what's it contacting?
It's not, it's just a theoretical depiction. It's a theoretical.
Is that what the book
depiction.
says?
Yeah. Well, go ahead. I don't recall the exact, why don't you read it to me?
Well, why don't you tell me, is that a contact wound?
I don't know what this is. This is.
That's a shotgun.
That's a shotgun.
That's a shotgun being fired. Those are the pellets coming out.
Object
Those are the
counsel
pellets-
testify.
Yeah, I think,
Yep.
this is a book, showing the series of steps after a
Shotgun
shotgun is
blast.
fired.
If
But
this-
it has nothing to do with what I found in the body. and does not help me determine
She
the
is
direction
getting
of the wind.
defensive, and that is
And I'm not
Poot's.
going to
That is
describe,
Poot's
you
game
can read
today.
it in the book. I don't remember how he says all of this.
The book isn't testifying, you are. You've testified that depicts a contact wound, yes?
No, that's not what she said.
I don't know what this is depicting. It could be that this is a contact wound. I don't know where you're going with this.
Where's I'm going. Is that barrel in contact with anything?
It's not in contact with anything. It looks
Where
like it's just
he's
flowing.
going is not your concern.
Okay, and that's fine. And your testimony is that barrel is at least 3 feet away from Paul's shoulder. Is that correct?
It could be, depending on the weapon, it could be, it's
she
not
said 2 to 3.
closer than 2 feet because we don't have the sibling. But we
No
do
sibling.
have packing material.
Okay. So, as we see here, these pellets are beginning to separate. Is it your testimony that those pellets had separated when they hit Paul's shoulder at all?
They are starting to separate. We don't have the complete, widening of it. They're still relatively clustered together,
Yeah,
but they're
he's
not
showing
as
her a
close
photocopy
as
from
they
a
would be
textbook.
if they were still contained within the widening.
Okay, now, at 2 feet, is there any gas left, or is it all
Yep,
dissipated?
spicier
like
than
the
I thought.
picture shows?
Well, what we have here, if there was more gas, if there was a contact wound to here.
It's not a contact wound.
I understand. The gas, you're wanting me to say yes or no, and
Yes
I
or no.
can't because I have the knowledge to
And she can
explain
say, "I
how
can't."
this relates to examining the body.
Fair.
Okay,
I
so-
don't give theoretical talks or, I don't start looking up in this book while I'm doing an autopsy. I use my practical reasoning and my experience and knowledge of things.
If there'd been gas in
So
the wound,
let her sit down.
when it hit his shoulder or
So
his neck,
freaking awkward.
would you expect to find some physical manifestation of that?
Well, there would have been, a lot more expansion, shoulder expansion. This was fairly contained on the
So
left shoulder.
your testimony is there would have been little or no gas going to his shoulder, to his neck.
Well, there is always some gas, but it's not the kind of gas that we get in a contact shock.
Exactly.
That's what he's trying to get to.
And let me,
So how did the back of his skull end up off? The thing is, this can be read 2 ways. Some jurors might see her as being rattled. Some might see him as over badgering. And the fact that he is trying to get her to be angry. So it just depends on how the jurors find him. But she's over explaining how, and this is why I don't think you should have witnesses in the courtroom. I think she was rattled by what he was doing with Ronnie Crosby before she even got up onto the stand. And that is part of the reason she should have been outside before coming on, because she shouldn't have seen him go after Ronnie Crosby. It's off-putting,
160 something, I think?
because she is rattled.
Go to the jury room for a break. Please do not discuss the case.
And the court is taking a break. All right. It is 11 a.m. on the East. We are going to go to a court break. Apparently today is the day that Poot brings the objections and the sass. This is the final countdown, and Poot's here for it. Poot's like, it's the final countdown, and he's ready for it. All
Ma'am,
right.
Please do not discuss your testimony with anyone. It'll take about 10 minutes.
The court's like, I'm sick of everybody's shit. We're taking a break because I'm tired of everyone's shit. Everyone is moving around the courtroom so much right now. It's kind of wild to see. All right, let me make sure my tabs are accurately muted so we can hear when the court comes back while I answer your questions. Let's do that while the court is on break. All right. Yes, Miguelina, let's go ahead and end the poll. The court's on break. Let's chat about this morning. Oh my goodness. All right. What have we learned this morning? Well, here's the first thing we've learned. Don't imply that an attorney is modifying their testimony due to personal feelings. It's not going to go well. Ronnie Crosby came with the fire this morning for Poot insinuating that he was shifting his testimony in this murder trial because he was frustrated and hurt and betrayed and angry with Alec Murdaugh because Alec stole from the firm and betrayed those that he loved and stole from a friend of theirs, a friend who was dying of colon cancer, a friend whose wife was asking them for help financially so the wife could be near where her husband was being treated out of state. It gave a lot of context to the lengths that Alec can go to deceive and to harm those around him. Whether that will even land with the jury because they are so tired of this case or not is yet to be seen. But I think it landed with a lot of you in the chat. That information about Bulworth was very interesting to me. The context we had a little of, but we did not have all of it. And it just shows that Alec does not care. He will steal from a close friend while that friend is in the hospital dying and his wife needs help. He does not care. And then Poot degraded it by saying that Bulworth guy, which I think really set Ronnie off. But here's what Poot was trying to do. Poot was trying to make Ronnie look angry, and it worked. Poot's goal in that cross was to make Ronnie angry and to look to the jury and say, not angry, huh? And he did that during his cross-examination. So did his cross-examination annoy the piss out of at least half of the chat? Yes, it did. Was it an effective cross-examination for what Poot was trying to do? I think that it was. I think that it was. He's trying to say Ronnie is clouded by emotion, and you saw it on the stand, because Ronnie's testimony is damaging to Alec. Damaging to Alec. I saw a question zoom by. I was trying to grab it. Susain said, Emily, were you surprised Poot asked Ronnie if he thought Alec committed the murders? Yes, I was, because he doesn't know what Ronnie was going to say. So Poot's goal was to piss off Ronnie, and he did piss off Ronnie. Whether he pissed off the jury while doing it is a whole separate question, but that's on Poot to decide where he needs to go. Look, he stood up in opening and said to the jury, you're not going to like me. Don't hold it against my client, because he knows what he's going to do. This is his tactic. Poot, at times in this trial, has come across with like, I don't know where my papers are, and I'm just a city boy. And then there's times where he is laser focused on his goal. And this morning's goal was to piss off these witnesses and cross to make them rattled. And it worked. How effective it will be is separate. So I liked Ronnie Cosby's testimony quite a lot. I thought it was powerful testimony. About the lengths that Alec will go to. And that's what the jury's going to be left with. And that even though he's hurt, he takes his ethical obligation as an attorney higher than his personal feelings. And I think he's right when he said, look, I need to move past my anger. I have a family, I have a life, I have a job. He's putting back together the pieces that Alec shattered. And he said, I was angry. I have to keep moving, even though this was done to all of us. And I think it was fair testimony. I really do. I liked his testimony. It rang very authentic. And I think his righteous indignation came across as righteous indignation. I don't think it came across as anger towards Alec. I think it came across as anger at the insinuation. So with that, I see another question. I think Ronnie's answer of, I don't know, might backfire on the defense. Sorry, defense. I think it might too. Do you think he killed him? He's like, I don't have the facts here. And I think that's a fair lawyer answer too, because he doesn't have the facts in this case, and he's not going to be clouded by judgment. He's saying, I haven't seen what this jury has seen. I don't know everything. I don't know. So with 14,000 votes, how is Ronnie? And I think it's Crosby, not Cosby. Chat, thank you. How is Ronnie Crosby's testimony? Totally right to clap back at Poot, 76%. Biased by his anger toward Alec, 5%. A little bit of both at 18%. So I think he had a right to be angry. I do. I think his one of the things that frustrates people the most in my life experience is accusing them of something that they did not do. And he's accusing Ronnie Crosby, apologies, of coming into court and saying things that he said in his testimony as an attorney with not just an oath that he took, but an oath to the court as an officer of the court beyond what a civilian witness would come in with, and insinuated that he would lie based on personal feelings or cloud or shade or color his testimony based on personal feelings. And that questions his ethics, his integrity, and his oath as an attorney. And he was pissed by that insinuation. And I thought he was right. And I'm here for the fire. I'm here for a fire. Oh, Cindy, I'm sorry. I just found out a student I used to teach was a victim of a murder self-harm. I am so sorry. I am having a hard time, but being part of this community is comforting. We're here for you. Thank you for your contagious positive energy. Cindy Lawnard, I'm sorry. There are many in the chat who have lost someone to unthinkable circumstances. It is very confusing grief to walk through circumstances like that. Very difficult grief to walk through. Give yourself grace. Give yourself absolute grace. It's all you can do. And it comes out of nowhere sometimes. Shannon said hunting shields, light, portable, plywood, and dissolve. I'm sure that is referring to the hogs at some point. I don't know. Barney Cat said, are we picking Secret Santas today because we live here now? I think we picked out Thanksgiving dinner yesterday, so it's fair. We need to put art on the walls at some point. We need to hang photos. Juniper said, good morning from Colorado with my lavender latte. That sounds delightful. My husband and I had a date night this weekend because it was needed. And I had a lavender lemon drop martini that was delicious. But before that, it was a vodka Prosecco lemon elderflower drink. Woo! It was so good. And it was in a beautiful kind of tall fluted glass, bigger than an average champagne glass. I felt very fancy, and I loved it. It's my birthday, and I'm happy to be spending it with you and the Lawnards. May I please have a goat scream?
Yes, we can do a goat scream for Juniper's birthday. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. So if you're like, Emily, when you're not drinking whiskey, what are you drinking? Well, if it says elderflower, that is what I'm drinking. Just Trader Joe's has a lemon elderflower small soda. It is one of the best drink mixes ever. You just mix stuff into it. Everything's delicious. Special K. It's my 46th birthday. Special K. Happy birthday. My new granddaughter was born yesterday. My all-dressed chips were delivered. I'm with y'all. What more could a girl ask for? What a great birthday. Cassie said, are you exhausted, Emily? Yes. My eye bags should give it away. We can measure them by week of trial. After sitting here for 6 weeks commenting on the trial, do you feel like you have been in court this whole time? A little bit. I'm getting more sleep than if I was doing this trial myself. And you're not getting to walk around. That is the one thing. We've seen it with these wandering attorneys. They definitely get to walk around more than I do. The sitting is hard. But yes, a little bit. They are long days. But like being in trial myself, my brain keeps working after trial because I'm still like, what about this? And do I remember that? And do I want to go back and look at this? And then I'm like, but the jury can't do any of that. The jury goes home at night and they can't turn off their brains and they can't go review anything. We can just pull up the replay. They can't. The lawyers can pull up the replay on the YouTube, but we can't. Rebecca Mary Stone said the doc was mainly focused on Paul's character. For me, it didn't change my opinion of Alex's guilt. That's tough. That's tough. Nobody important said, did AM say on the stand he didn't check M&P before the 911 call? If so, why did Barber do 20-second timer in court? Didn't he change his story on his defense team mid-trial? I think they are trying to shift with when he checked them, but also say that 20 seconds is enough time to have checked them because they're not sure. I think the 20 seconds was still a very good, even though it was 17 seconds, I think the 20-second timer was a very powerful, look, this is longer than you think it is. I thought it was a good cross-examination, but yeah, it's shifted. Question, would it help to bring experts on desperation of addicts? I don't think so. They would need direct evidence of, well, A, it would be improper, but B, because that would be improper propensity to say, like, addicts do this, Alec is an addict, therefore Alec did this, that propensity is improper. And unless you're talking about something physical like a detox, like the shit you up real bad of the detox, but that's not a central point of this case. So some of it is improper propensity. And I think people are individuals. If there is something that Alec did specifically that they can explain with experts, that is allowed in. But some propensity is showing someone's character, and then they're arguing that they have this character, therefore they're acting within this character in that way. I don't see how you would get in. Then again, yesterday when the defense started arguing party opponent as a hearsay objection, I was like, oh, I've never seen anyone use that way. Called Judge Abby. I was like, Judge Abby, listen to what they argued. And Judge Abby was like, huh, I like it. I see it. She's like, I've never seen anyone use it that way. I'm like, right? I've never seen anyone use it that way. But the rules of evidence are to try to balance the scales for both sides. And so you can't use party opponent against the defendant if you're not going to be able to use it against the state. So I think that's fair. Have any theories been debunked yet? I don't know. That's a question for the chat. Mara said, I think he's guilty, but I think the state did a horrible job. Two things can be true at once, and the jury will hang or find him not guilty. Also, I refuse to watch the documentary until after this shit show is over. Did we know that yesterday was going to become a literal shit show? Did any of you miss yesterday's testimony about Alec shitting his pants literally in the car with his brothers? If you missed that testimony, that happened yesterday. Teresa said, your customer service was fantastic. Well, thank you. My Valentine's mug came broken and they expedited me another one. I'm so glad that they did. And yes, I will absolutely pass that along to the team. Dear bro, sis, your tardiness made me watch Law and Crime. Apologies. I'm always here before court starts. Beverly Bilberry's missing teeth. That's very specific. Will there be any disciplinary actions brought against the prosecution for lying to the grand jury about non-existent evidence, i.e. blood-stained shirt? No. I think what the prosecution presented with regard to the shirt, if caveat, asterisk, I need to look at the dates, but I think they didn't do the confirmatory testing and we're going based on their presumptive test. We don't have all of the records. I want to see if they presented that as a presumptive test, if they presented it as definitive testing. I need more information. But I believe they presented the shirt to the grand jury. I believe that they presented the two different types of shot loaded in the guns, which was also an error. But there is a difference between they're going based off the facts that they have at the time and they're lying about the facts. So I need more information, and I'd want to see the transcripts, but it is something that's in the back of my mind with this case, with what the grand jury was shown. It's definitely a question. Whenever you yell Creighton, I laugh. Thanks for making things lighthearted at the appropriate times. I try. Sometimes I miss, but I try. Drinking a pistachio latte out of the office for work. I won't be able to catch the live until I get back to the office later. No worries, we'll be here. Me on 1.5 speed is wild. Do the jurors really not look at media? They're not supposed to. And I've found in my experience with jurors in a lot of trials that they take it very, very seriously. And I think most appreciate the forced social media break. Like, oh, I can't. Sorry. But I found that jurors take their duty very seriously. The thing I worry about more is things populating on their phone, like Apple News alerts populating on their phone so they see something, or them turning on their TV to watch Housewives, and then there's a Netflix documentary that they see. Wait, Housewives is on Hulu, but you know what I mean. Them turning on Netflix to watch whatever they're watching on Netflix and then seeing it. It's the accidental things that I worry about more because they don't stop engaging with the world. You know, if they go out to get coffee in the morning, people are like, oh my God, are you watching this? Especially in a smaller town where people want to chat. Your Honor, they're going to rebut our case and we don't like it. I get that it's his job. I'm just super done with his shenanigans. Though I find that Poot can chafe, I think today is amusing, and I'm here, literally I'm here for the are you not entertained of it all today. I think Poot is scared. Seems he wants something to not be said. And that might ring to the jury as well. Earlier, someone asked about what does the jury do at the jury view. I saw a number of questions. They saved all their objections for today, Katie. At the jury view, they will go and walk around. No one's going to narrate it. They're not like a tour of Colonial Williamsburg. They're just going to see. They can walk in and walk out. They might be allowed to walk from the house up to the kennels, but the judge will be there to make sure that they're not discussing the case. The jury can't discuss the case while they're there. How hard would that be for you? You want to just elbow the juror that's been sitting next to you for 6 weeks and be like, oh my God, so that's the door. And they said he was standing here. And you want to kind of recreate it in your brain. They're not going to be allowed to do that. And the judge will be there and the attorneys will be there. Will the judge be in his robe when he's out at Moselle? I imagine that he will be. I imagine that he'll drive there in his, civilian clothes or his street clothes, which is probably a pair of khakis, a button-down shirt, and a tie. But you can't go on a tour and no one's going to narrate it. So they're just going to be there. Chat, no. Don, no. I didn't say there were murders at Colonial Williamsburg. No. Look, I've been watching a lot of Abby Cox and Sophia Nygaard videos. It was just in my head. That's what's in my brain. Look, if you want to know what I watch on YouTube, but right now, Abby Cox and Sophia. Is it possible that AM first shot Maggie in the legs? I don't know. I think there is arguments for two shooters. I think there's also an argument for a known shooter, because in the defense's breakdown, which I found to be very clear, in the defense's breakdown of how the shooters happened, if there's one shooter and someone shoots Paul, the only way Maggie's not on her phone and calling 911 if she comes around to see where Paul is if she knows the shooter. So I think it goes both ways. It either goes to two shooters and one's shooting Paul and one's shooting Maggie at the same time. Or it goes to Maggie is processing what's happening and is absolutely stunned and trying to mentally process what's happening. Oh, that scared me. Is trying to process what's happening. And that might be the explanation for why Maggie's phone was taken to see if Maggie called 911. But her phone wasn't accessed. And that might have been because of stress. So I think that argument can go both ways, like everything in this case. And that's hard for this jury if everything goes both ways. Proffering every witness will double the time. I'm glad they're not doing it. I'm glad we're bringing the jury. Theory, Maggie's phone was left in the golf cart when they drove to the kennels. She left it there and AM didn't realize until it was too late, so he had to chuck it. Blue Bayou, a very fair theory that I don't know if we'll see the state argue it, but it makes sense if she was driving. Thank you for streaming. Today is my mom's heavenly birthday. Miss her extra today. Ashley, big hugs to you. Can I just say how much I love this judge? I like this judge too. And I truly think the judge has been consistent. I know there's lots that don't think the judge has been consistent. I think he's been eminently consistent. And he tells them, I'm not pre-ruling on things. You do the things, someone objects, and then I'll rule on it. I think he's been very consistent. And all you can ask for is consistency. Can I get the work note again? I have already laughed out. Candy Mom, yes, you're on jury duty with the law nerds. Who's going to slow it down? I will see. Are the closings going to be like Tim Curry and Clue? I don't remember Clue. Sorry.
Oh, I know. I'm sorry. I got it right here.
Why isn't anybody ready? Can you explain what a speaking objection is? When Poot says, Your Honor, They're doing blah, 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 blah. That's a speaking objection. As opposed to objection leading. Objection leading. Objection, state the grounds. Objection, Your Honor. And then you start arguing. That's a speaking objection. When you start spewing shit. He's really just
Doctor, I'd ask you to
signaling
look
to
at
the
this
jury
photo
what he
and
wants.
Tell me if this is one of the photos from your autopsy.
Jennifer,
Okay, that's all I need.
Dick Harpootlian
Now, I'd offer this
is the defense attorney.
defense exhibit number.
We have been told by those in the chat whose parents know
195
him
to evidence, please.
that his nickname in college was Poot. And since I yelled Dick a lot,
Put that up on the
we
screen,
started
please.
yelling Poot instead. Angie, I promise I'll say hi to Sienna when we're not talking about bodies. At the break, I meant to do it and I didn't. I'll get there. So, Skylar, I think the judge will probably be in like
So, what are we looking
work
at
clothes
here?
and a robe.
Do you want me to come? Oh, here it is.
No, just tell me what it is.
Yeah, okay. So this is an entrance shotgun wound to the left shoulder area.
Okay, and you a moment ago said something about packing material.
The truck trading confusion
What
was
is
helpful.
packing material?
Yes. So
Oh, yeah. Very Joan Cusack. This witness's
there's
voice.
foam that is frequently within between.
I am Justin Glenn. Travel well.
pellets.
Just a moment. Your Honor, I can't hear her because of the noise coming through the door. I apologize, but
I'm old.
I just need to understand what she's saying. I apologize. May I begin? Yes, sir. Packing material. Let's start over again. Tell me again.
Yes, so it's frequently present in the wadding along with the pellets that sort of help keep them together.
Okay, so the wadding, you got the powder, wadding, shotgun pellets, and are these? Is it in the pellets or is it close
She's
behind
not a
it? the
weapons
wadding, or-
expert.
It's within the wadding.
Okay, and you indicated you saw some packing material.
Well, that is very consistent with, with a little bit of packing material that would, as we have pellets going into the shoulder and some of the packing materials depositing on the skin.
She did not give a time of death. She's the pathologist.
And is this a picture of the packing material?
Coroner was supposed to
There
give
is-
time of death, and the
There is
coroner
some of the white
just
material, yes.
used
on-
his fingies
on the skin.
in the armpits, so we know what that is.
Correct.
Bree Krupp,
Did you note that in
happy
your autopsy
birthday.
report?
No, it was just a general observation.
Okay. Is it important it was there?
It didn't matter to me whether it's there or not, but it does reinforce that it is an entrance wound.
But you concede it was not in your autopsy report.
It's like it's an entrance wound.
Well, all the totality of my findings,
Are
I
in the
don't
report.
always write every little thing in my autopsy report. I could go on, that it could be 50 pages, an autopsy report. I include the findings, my determinations, and I could have mentioned it, but I did not,
And why not?
because it's not always necessary to mention that kind of thing.
Is it evidence of anything?
Well, I do believe that that supports
Teresa, yes, I think Poot
an
could turn
entrance
off this
wound, although it's-
jury with his
I don't
style.
I don't require myself to see it in order to make that determination.
But you agree with me, it supports your conclusion, correct?
Yes,
And you didn't put in your autopsy report.
that's correct.
Would it be in your notes?
No,
She's like, I don't know.
Okay.
Oh, we'll get to
So-
that at a break.
And could you step down here and show me what the packing material looks like?
We'll talk about badgering a witness and
Point it
argumentative
right
with a
over there behind
witness.
You probably want to stand over here so the jurors over there can see it.
yes.
Whatever.
This is what I believe
You don't need to tell her what to do.
consistent with, packing material.
And did you remove any of that to be analyzed or
That's
forensically
fantastic.
examined?
No, I did not.
My
Okay,
love
and
and
while we're
pies
looking
dog
at
is
this
named
picture,
Bingo.
You can actually see some shot in there, right?
Yes.
And
Oh, Cassie DM me.
that
or email
shot
me.
is
I'll tell you.
that, I mean, that's pretty, that area right there is much wider
Alley Cat will get a goat.
than this entrance wound in his cheek, is it not?
Yes, this entrance wound is larger than this re-entrance wound here. And I believe I actually went over this last time. Frequently, there's enlargement of wound as it goes along. But in this case, we have a wound going along the top of the shoulder, so it's going to be oblong. As it enters the left neck area, it's entering more at a right angle, perpendicular to the jaw, so it's going to appear smaller. And that has nothing to do with spreading of pellets.
Okay, well, let's
Woeful
ask,
to
see that a little more. You
profile.
see that pellet that's clear.
Yep.
I mean, clearly there.
Wild
You see-
difference.
Right, and then you see a pellet above it. You see that? Right.
Yeah.
Right. Let me put my glasses on. Is that a pellet?
Yeah, it may be a pellet, yes.
Okay. So we have, if you step back just a little bit so this juror can see, we have pellets coming in like this, correct?
Well, you know, they're all
Bev Taylor, I
kind of
did
banging against each other. We
see
have-
that
we have
she's in the courtroom.
The wound track
We'll get there.
is from left to right. And we do have pellets that are in there. They didn't they stopped in there, so they're not all continuing through.
Okay, how many pellets were captured in his shoulder?
I captured, I don't know how many I captured. I collected a sampling of the pellets that were along the wound path.
But you took x-rays.
Yeah, but, you know, that's not necessarily the total amount, because some of them, you know, exited and some were in the brain. So the x-rays were taken without the brain in the head because the brain came separately.
Okay, but they did send you the brain.
Yes.
Did you take x-rays of the brain?
No, I did not.
Why not?
I didn't take x-rays of the brain
And the
because I
reason- oh, go ahead.
determined that wasn't necessary from
To
the...
determine cause of death,
To support your conclusion.
to support a conclusion.
I didn't take x-rays of the brain. I guess hindsight is always 20/20. I could have taken x-rays of the brain. I could have...
I'm glad they asked.
I could have taken more photos. I could have taken a photo of the brain at the autopsy. I did not. And I would have liked to, but, you know, I can tell from the examination of the body that I had an entrance wound on my left shoulder and it's exiting at the top of the head. It's not a contact wound to the top of the head.
Okay.
That's my determination.
Okay, but the reason you didn't take x-rays of the brain was you'd already reached your conclusion, correct? That you didn't need it because this was an entrance wound.
Well, I did not, because I felt comfortable with my determination.
And decided therefore not to take x-rays of the brain.
Well, I don't always take x-rays of every organ. I was comfortable I would be able to recover some pellets on the brain, and it wasn't necessary to show the spread.
How many cases have you been involved in where the brain literally exploded out of the head? I mean,
I
that
don't know
weren't
if
suicides.
exploded is the way she's...
Where the brain exploded out of the head.
Well, as the book describes it,
Well, I think that the determination that an entrance wound to the top of the head, contact range, all of that gas expansion would not have, the brain would not have escaped that. There would have been a defect, cavity, or fragmentation of the brain, which was not there.
Which was not
You can see
present.
the brain actually.
do you remember what my original question was?
What was your question?
Okay, my question was, how many cases have you
She took
done an
issue with the word
autopsy of a
exploded.
contact wound to the top of the head, which wasn't a suicide?
She took issue with the word exploded. You rephrased it.
Very, very few.
Less than one?
I don't remember exactly, but it's not a tip. Usually contact shotgun wounds, are suicides.
And typically it's in the mouth.
They can be under the chin, in the mouth, sometimes they're to the side of the head. There are people that do shoot themselves onto the top of the head as well. And I can't recall exactly.
Not with a shotgun.
You know, I remember any of those.
And in all those cases of the brain that explode out of the cranium?
The exploding word is what
Oh,
her
no.
problem is.
Okay. So you would agree with me that
I'm not agreeing with you on
the
shit.
way that well, strike that. Let's go a little bit further with where we're going here. Could you put up the X-ray of the shoulder? You can go ahead and take your seat and testify from up there.
How generous. What are we doing? Pooty poot. What are we doing?
Okay, tell us what this is.
Yes, they are pellets, and I have his shoulder, kind of out when I take the wound. We have some pellets remaining in the shoulder area. We have some disruption of the shoulder tissue here, some of the bone, and then we have we actually have less, we have more spread. They're more spread out as they're going closer to the neck.
So there are pellets in the top of the arm, the shoulder. Where is this? Right up in here?
Yes.
Okay. And then there's additional pellets, it looks like, down below that, like near his ribs, correct?
That's because it's starting to spread, yes.
And it's starting to spread to get to this
The
place right here.
over-explaining is something most experts do.
What place?
It's not a
Is this where
favorite
the-
tactic of mine. They
I mean,
just want to
it's-
explain
No,
so
it's in the
badly.
neck.
It's in the neck.
But-
Okay.
I
prefer
indicated that I recovered, it's
That they
going,
stand their ground.
it's over here, then some
And
of
then
it is actually in the trachea.
explain on
as well.
redirect.
So that's the windpipe of the neck. So we have some in the neck. This is the chest area. It did not go into the chest.
Okay, let me see another x-ray, please.
So they're going through the
What was that
x-rays.
exhibit? I'm sorry, I didn't announce it. 112, okay, let me see the next x-ray.
Alec. The defendant's name is
Okay, and where's
pronounced
that?
Alec, Alec, and
That is
Alex.
the
And Richard,
the top
because he's
of
Richard
the,
Alexander Murdaugh.
Left shoulder and
So
the left
all?
arm.
Okay. And you see a number of pellets there.
Yes,
That would be right in this area right here?
yes.
Okay. Next, there's, I think, one more x-ray.
Casey Cat, well, at least we'll see photos of the jury view. And their view will be videotaped.
Okay, and are there any pellets here? Or are those the same
Sandy,
pellets
they
down there?
can't stage
At
Moselle.
the
It's
bottom?
under
Yeah, well,
we
contract
have-
for sale.
You can see, there are pellets here.
And they
You
won't
can
be in
see
the
them
house.
in the head. There's some pellets in the head.
They won't be going in the
brain
house.
is not within the cranial cavity, but we do see some of the pellets ended up over here on the right side. See, R for right. There's the hole at the top of the head, and some of the pellets
R
are,
for
they're
right. I
spread
love
out
her.
on the right side of the head.
How many?
Well, I can see there's 3 here.
3?
On the right side of the head.
Okay.
Yes.
So if well, how many pellets are there in a 12-gauge shotgun shell, and these are used primarily for duck hunting?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I'm an expert at examining human bodies and
Not
determining
weapons.
the injuries that occurred, and, I don't know how many pellets would be. When I took my boards, I may have had to actually know that, but I don't use this information in order, you can ask your ballistics expert.
Yeah.
Well, we did.
Great.
And I think they said something like,
I don't really know the
Wait,
answer to
wait,
that. I'm not going
pause.
to disagree with the ballistics expert. I do have a trajectory.
When there's an
that-
objection,
and exit
stop
wound on the right
answering.
side of the back of the head.
It doesn't
how
help if
many
you keep going.
pellets were in the body? Left
I
in the
did not
body?
count them. I just collect a representative sample of it. I don't collect all of them.
She
And I
doesn't need
don't
to.
count all of them.
And she doesn't need to.
And
There's no need to be defensive
we
about it.
know you don't know how many were in the brain because you didn't x-ray the brain, correct?
That's correct.
But if there were 70 pellets or 75 pellets in his shoulder, his chest, and his neck, and hypothetically there are anywhere between 135 and 160 pellets in the normal duck shot, that's 40 pellets that travel on, for the sake of argument, correct?
Well,
My math, just
I don't
use
really,
my math.
I don't feel comfortable answering these questions because it's not, the specific ballistics are not my area of expertise.
I'm not going to ask you about
I really don't
ballistics.
feel
just
comfortable
did.
answering them. I examine human bodies and come to my determinations based on the wounds, and I can see I was correct that this is
Her
a
job is to answer the
shotgun
questions,
wound
though.
to the left shoulder that's going up to the right side of the head. And questions about numbers.
Stop explaining.
I really don't
Stop.
want to just, I can't
Speculate.
answer that because, I don't know everything. I'm an expert, I'm a physician.
She's getting
I'm an
very
expert
defensive.
At examining human deceased individuals, determining cause and manner of death.
He's getting more
Okay, let's
condescending.
go back to the original question.
'Cause it
and
rattles
assume-
her.
I don't know the answer to the shotgun, how many pellets there would be.
That's not what
We're
he
not
asked, though.
asking you how many pellets, but if there's 75 pellets, let's do some math here. This is simple math.
Okay, I can do math.
Okay, 75 pellets we can count in the body, the chest, the neck. And there's
This is a
anywhere from
hypothetical. She's allowed to answer
35
hypotheticals.
to 165 pellets in the normal duck shot, 12-gauge shot.
Right, so 75 plus 60, that would be 135. And then what did you say, 70 or 80?
75.
She's like, I can do
Okay,
math.
75. So we started with 75, plus 75 is 150. So that's your answer. If your question is, you're asking me to do the math.
So my question is this. After
is
those
it?
pellets have gone through the shoulder and hit bone, apparently, correct?
Yes.
And then
Some.
they go through the neck. Do they hit more bone there?
There was some damage to the cartilage of the trachea. It was in the tracheal wall and some muscle. There's not a lot of bone in the neck. The only bone really in the neck
Right.
is the spinal column.
Well, I guess what I'm saying, when you were talking about Maggie a moment ago, and you talked about a shot that I think grazed her skull, you said there was a lot of intracranial pressure. Is that right? It created a lot of intracranial pressure.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm trying to figure out, and maybe you can help me, your
Ask a
testimony
clear
is there was
question. Maybe
enough
she'll give a clear answer.
from the
But we'll see.
less than half the load that goes through to, was it one place it hit? Was it had to go through the brain still?
Yeah.
not a load.
I didn't
We're
say
talking about
that
Maggie
less than
getting hit
half
with
the
bullets.
load went through. Some of it may have actually exited the top of the head.
'Cause
I don't
Maggie
know. But-
wasn't
or went into the brain. I
hit
did
with a
not X-ray
shotgun.
the brain, and so I don't know exactly how many, but we can tell that this is the direction.
Was the brain macerated?
Wait, he's talking
No,
about
it was
Maggie.
largely intact. There was some maceration at the base of the brain where it was torn from the brainstem. Okay, the
Okay,
brain went up
Maggie.
and torn from the brainstem, but it was pretty much surprisingly intact.
I can't tell if she's talking about Maggie or Paul.
From a shotgun wound.
Have you looked at
Maggie.
the crime scene
Okay,
photos?
good.
I really didn't look at the crime
Just
scene
say no.
photos with any kind of, attention.
Okay, so, but you are aware that the
She was talking
brain
about Maggie. It was confusing,
was catapulted out of
the
his
way
head,
she was answering.
probably hit the ceiling and then landed outside.
Well,
These questions.
I could tell from examining the body that the brain catapulted out of the head, because I
Okay.
received the brain and a hole that was consistent with the brain leaving it.
Can you and I agree, and based on your testimony when you previously testified, that there would not be, that the gas from
witnesses
2 or 3
today,
feet
y'all.
away would not travel through the arm, travel through the neck, and then go into the brain?
Well,
And
there's a
the-
lot of material that's going through, and plus we've got fragments of the brain, the skull, of the base of the brain, that can also, there's a lot of energy going in that direction. Whether it's gas or not, it's energy from portions of ammunition propelling in that direction. So, whether you want to call it gas or whether it's other thing, I really don't know the theoretical explanation. I'm sure it's in the book.
It
But I
is.
examine the bodies and I make the determination on the direction and
like,
the
it's not
type of injury
theoretical,
from
this is what
examining
happened.
the human body.
Okay.
The book
She
seems to
needs to
indicate
answer
that the
shorter.
primary cause for an explosion such as this, the brain exploding out, is the gas. You would agree?
She needs to answer shorter.
Well, I think each case is a little bit different.
Now, what does the
And,
book
the
indicate? He only
kind
asked what the
of
book
gas
indicated.
that,
Listen, Linda,
would
he
cause
only
the
asked what the
head
book
to
indicated.
explode, would also.
Yeah, the book might
I mean,
indicate that.
There,
Different.
I think the book is talking about gas
The more she explains, the worse it gets for her.
Gas
I
in
think.
a contact shotgun wound. So what is your question about the book? I would actually have to refresh my recollection.
Well,
Because I don't really I haven't read the book in a long time, but I know what I've seen on the body.
If I quote this to you, you would, and I can show it to you.
No, she
The
would need more
gas entering the
context.
closed chamber of the head expands rapidly, adding to the pressure waves acting on the bony framework of the skull. The only way for the skull to relieve the pressure produced is to shatter.
She would need
You agree with
the
that?
context of that.
That actually must be describing a contact shotgun
It is.
wound. Okay, because that really makes sense for a contact shotgun wound.
And your reasoning for this, the same phenomenon that happened without the gas is?
Well, we've got injury coming from
She didn't say it
beneath.
shattered.
The skull is, like I told the jury, that
Per
is
my last
not
email.
shattered. We do have some horrible injury, but the shattering of the skull, much of it is still up intact. We don't have shattering of every bone. We don't have shattering of the face. So
Why didn't you shave the head?
why didn't I shave the
Right, were
head?
you looking for any, if much of the skull was still there?
Look, my determination, I didn't shave the head because I
Just answer
was
the question.
confident that that was an exit wound on the right side of the top of the head. It wasn't necessary for me to shave an exit wound.
Right. That's it. Leave it
If you
be.
had shaved the head, and again, apparently you'd already come to your opinion by this point, you could have seen whether it was soot or stippling or any distortion around, or taken samples of the hair and determined whether or not there was any sort of GSR in it, which would be more consistent with a contact wound.
Well, no, GSR can just be in, we know gunshot residue can deposit.
That
in,
shit- you put that shit
you
on
know, I'm
everything.
not-
It just
like,
gets everywhere.
Ballistics is not necessarily my strongest suit, but I know that GSR can deposit, within a few feet. Somebody doesn't have to indicate a contact wound.
Okay, so
And they don't test GSR on victims of gunshot wounds because they would have GSR on them because obviously.
did the shot penetrate the jawbone?
It went through through that area. I believe it actually may have went underneath the bone.
So it did not connect with the bone? Correct?
Yes.
Are any of the pellets that you see in the shoulder, the left shoulder, heading down instead of up?
Well, there's probably kind of a billiard ball effect when these things are going through, and there could be some, directionality but I didn't make that determination because it wasn't important to me to
see
make
which
that
way the pellets were
determination.
going?
What?
To determine which way some of the pellets were heading?
I can tell
Her getting
from
rattled
the
is not good for
entirety of my
her.
finding at the autopsy.
Okay,
The thing is, if you look at something like, a postcard photograph, that doesn't necessarily tell you the whole story. I did my autopsy, I viewed all of the wounds, I was confident in the direction of this wound path. And
I
I'm
am
not
confident.
trying to say, oh, well, which direction are the pellets going? I can see that there's, the entrance wound was to the top of the left shoulder, went through the left side of the neck and out the top of the head.
And how many pellets made it through the brain to the skull,
Don't know.
to fracture the skull? How many pellets?
Oh, well, there were some pellets in the brain. I don't know how many.
Because you didn't x-ray it.
Correct.
So, since you don't
That
count
is
the
a good
number of
answer.
pellets, tell the jury, please, how you know how many pellets hit the skull and fractured it and allowed this eruption to occur.
I don't know how many pellets. I never said that I did.
No, I didn't say you said it. I just want to know if you know it.
I don't know the answer to that.
And it's not important to you.
No.
It doesn't really matter.
No.
It's really very theoretical. I examined the bodies, and I made my determination based on examination of the body.
Right.
Is it true that an autopsy report should be able to be read by an independent pathologist to come to a conclusion?
Yes.
Okay.
Too late.
Are you ready? Okay, how about put that up for us, please?
Too late on the objection.
Noises,
I'm sorry, sir?
some strange noises. Who's talking? You're questioning the witness? Proceed.
I'm asking Doug to put up exhibit number.
I didn't hear you talking. I heard
Oh, I'm
you were
sorry.
questioning the witness and then
I
a
may have
strange
mumbled.
voice
I
coming from.
apologize.
The court's being
what's the exhibit number?
sassy. The
Okay.
defense table is
So,
speaking to Poot.
How about step down here, please?
The defense table is speaking to Poot out of turn. And the court
And
was
get the
like,
pointer
there's
for me,
just
please.
a strange voice,
Stand over there, please.
which is the judge's way of saying
See.
the defense is
So you indicated there were,
talking when they shouldn't be.
I asked you if you
That's
shaved the
funny.
head.
The judge
You
is
said no.
sassy.
You said there wasn't.
These cross-examinations are going to take forever. Poot
there
is going to
was-
make the
was
judge
enough
eat
to
his
skull
words.
there to determine
He's
what
like,
happened. Is
they've
there?
got 7 witnesses. You're going to eat every single one of
Well,
those 7 witnesses.
I
We're going to
know
be here
this
for
is
another
an
week.
Exit wound
And
from
Poot's gonna make it happen.
examining the entirety of the findings, and I did
We
not.
live here now.
I did not
Cheers.
need to shave the
This is
hair.
just asked and answered, and it's repetitive.
That was my opinion and determination at the time of it.
Yes, ma'am, we understand that, but what, did you look at this to confirm or question your opinion, or have you already come to your opinion?
Well, I always am questioning
Sandra, on this,
myself
I think they're just
during the
undermining this witness, and
It's
she's
not
already
just-
rattled, so they're going to keep
I
going.
look at take a long time to look at everything.
They've gotten their goal, that
Before I
she's
reach a conclusion.
backpedaling
Okay, so the
a little,
totality of
and she
findings
sounds less
here,
confident.
Told me this was an exit wound. The brain came pretty much intact. It was propelled out of the top of the head.
No, there were a couple moments when the photos have been
This is an exit
flashed
wound,
on screen.
and I did not do further investigation to rule out an entrance wound because I was confident it was not.
So you just said you did not, you were confident and you did not look further because you were confident you were right.
Well, I looked at it, and in fact, I took a photograph of it, and this is consistent with an exit.
It's what?
Consistent with an exit.
Congratulations, Ann Bell.
Brain came out of that defect. If it were a shotgun entrance wound, there would be a lot more destruction of the head.
And again, you've never seen a contact wound to the head that wasn't in a suicide case.
You know, I don't honestly remember. That
So you
was-
don't remember, let me just rephrase, you don't remember having a case involving a contact
She's had
wound to the head
5,000 autopsies.
wasn't a suicide
Yeah.
case. You just don't remember it.
I may have, it's possible, I did not survey, I may have seen one where somebody was shot at point blank range with a shotgun, and then the entire head is gone. So when I get that kind of, if there was a contact shotgun, whether it's suicide or homicide, the entire head would have been basically blown off.
And so in every case, there's no reason for us to go there because you don't remember ever seeing a case where there was a contact wound and to the back of the head.
Objection asked.
I think it's honestly.
She has to stop
whether
when he
it's
objects.
Self-inflicted or inflicted by somebody else.
She just
The
has
features
to
of
listen.
the body are going to be the same. So that's my answer, and I
Okay.
can't, whether I
And
remember
part of
it
her
or
getting
not. I've
roasted
done a
on
lot of
cross
autopsies. I don't necessarily
is because
remember how
she's
many
not
or if
listening
I've
and
done
she's
one, but
defensive.
I imagine people are shot at close or contact range with a shotgun. And in a contact shotgun, whether it's by suicide or homicide, the entire head would have been basically blown apart.
She
This
has
is-
to stop over-explaining.
This is terrible, and I know it's terrible. It's probably the worst thing you ever saw, but there would be a lot more damage with a contact shotgun. And that's my professional opinion based on my experience. And if
So
other people
stop
disagree with me,
talking.
that's fine. I don't have to convince them. This is my determination based on my
You have to convince the
education
jury.
and multiple years of experience doing autopsies and
over-explaining.
being a forensic pathologist.
There's
And
no
I think
question
in your
pending.
testimony,
He's just
whenever
going to let
that
her
was,
keep
weeks
talking
ago,
because it's
you conceded that reasonable pathologists can differ, correct?
because she
Yes,
can't.
I think a reasonable.
Reasonable
I said,
minds
you
can
asked me
differ.
if a reasonable person, you didn't actually ask me if a reasonable
gosh.
pathologist. You asked me if a reasonable
She's getting
person
snappy.
could have a different opinion. And I remember
snap
that
back. When the
because
attorneys are snappy,
I was
it's
sorry
different.
that I didn't say, well, of course, reasonable people can think that. But a reasonable pathologist could also think that, but I would disagree with that. I
Okay.
don't think all
Reasonable
opinions, reasonable
the standard for
pathologists
doubt.
could have an opinion like that, but I think it would really be wrong.
Well, then it's not
Thank you.
reasonable if
Go
it's
ahead and take
wrong.
a stand, please.
And that was Poot's goal. It's a reasonable explanation. She then said, I don't agree. But at first she said, reasonable. And that is where Poot should stop. She has said a reasonable pathologist could disagree. And that gives room for the defense to argue. Oh, she looks like she's shaking. Even the
met and discussed
state's
with,
witness agrees that it's reasonable.
Dr. Kinsey.
They're not going to
Ken
stop.
Kinsley,
They should have.
Kinsey, about his findings.
I did meet with him once when a couple of weeks prior to the autopsy, I really never, prior to this trial.
So
I met
Poot's
with,
goal has been accomplished of getting her to say
with
it's
the
reasonable.
prosecution's team. And I would have been available to meet with you if you called me as well. But Ken Kinsey was responsible for the crime scene.
No,
what he
Brenda,
had
I
to
said I like
say
this
was,
witness. I don't
really
care for the way
wasn't,
she's answering. She's
I already did my
over-explaining
autopsy
and
report.
sinking
I
herself.
already came to my decision, my determinations based on my examination of the body, and whatever it was, he's going to do the crime scene. So I
I
don't
like this
remember
witness,
having
but
any specific
You
conversation.
don't remember
way
talking
she's-
about
The way she's answering is
vectors and
not
where the blood splatter would have
helpful
gone.
to
and
her.
those-
Well, he asked me, he said, do you know anything about this? And I said, that's your department. I really am not a blood
Over-explaining.
spatter expert. So I had nothing to offer, and I really didn't encourage listening to it because it's not my area.
And let me,
And Poot's not going to stop
say
because
a couple of things. One is
the damage is done and he's going to keep
You
going.
indicated that you did not put that packing material in your autopsy report, correct?
Yes,
And today's the first time you've ever said anything about packing, correct?
yes.
Okay. Secondly, let me just sort of summarize this and see if we can get this over with. There are certain things you did not do in this autopsy because you concluded it wouldn't be helpful in reaching your conclusion, correct?
I agree with
Correct.
that.
Like no x-ray of the brain.
I would have been, I did not x-ray the brain, right?
Okay. There were, and your belief is that the shotgun wound to the shoulder being so much bigger is because of the angle?
Yes,
Okay. And then it narrows down to, you would concede as a hole in his neck?
yes,
Okay. Shotgun starts out wider, that shot starts out wider, I think we confirmed that.
What?
the defect on the shoulder is
Right.
wider because it's kind of going across the shoulder, so it's going to create a defect on the shoulder that's wider than something entering at a right angle or perpendicular. So that's, and I think that makes sense to me. It's consistent with what I've seen in more than 20 years of my practice.
Because
and
it's
there wasn't anything
more
that,
grazing than just a straight
seemed
entry
odd
wound.
about that.
Right.
And you would concede you're not a ballistics expert?
I
Yes.
know the kind of ballistics.
Just say yes.
Some forensic pathologists know a lot about ballistics. I know probably an average amount.
Okay, and so when you say it started out wider and then came down to this hole, have you discussed that with any ballistics experts?
It doesn't require, that's forensic pathology. That's damage to the body. I don't need to be a ballistics expert, and I've done enough autopsies on shotgun wounds to make that determination without requiring additional ballistics knowledge.
But we can see that the shotgun starts out, the shot starts small and then the pellets expand.
Objection asked and answered, Your Honor.
Finally.
Objection sustained.
Finally.
Why are there
I
no
can't
shot-
make
no-
it stop.
Why there's no shot in his cheek?
The only
if
person
it's
who can make it
expanding?
stop is Creighton and this witness,
there no
who's
pellet
talked
holes
over
here?
every objection
Because
the entire time.
they, probably that we have some wadding going in there.
Probably?
Yeah, I think that is consistent with the wadding. And there are, there's some pellets
Stop.
remaining in the
Stop.
wadding as well.
Stop.
Is the wadding going where?
Oh, Creighton can't help her. She's
That's
doing
an
it to herself.
entrance wound. Okay, it's entering perpendicularly. Why do we have, the pellets did not terminate in the cheek.
They kept going.
They continued upward.
But a number of them terminated in the shoulder,
Yes,
in the chest, up here, right?
Short answers.
yes.
And then
Not
they-
the chest,
then
the
they
neck,
stop
not the
I'm
chest.
sorry?
Not the chest, the neck.
But the neck, the shoulder and upper neck, right?
Yes.
And then, I mean, if they stop expanding here, so the cheek isn't, I mean, one of those pellets is,
Objection, asked and answered to the former question.
Your Honor?
It's been asked and answered. I sustain the objection.
It has been. This is cross-examination.
And you say these x-rays are consistent with your opinion?
Yes.
She doesn't need to explain her findings, C minor.
Beg your pardon.
She
Let
needs
me ask you one
to
question about
answer
the
on
Maggie one.
cross
Your position is
and
that
then
the tags
explain
don't
it on
indicate anything.
redirect.
Well,
She needs to just
they're
answer what she's
not
asked
determinative.
in short and
They're
succinct
something we
answers.
look at.
Or
but
say, "I
the
can't answer
tags
that
on the
in yes,
breast
no."
are very
She is not
non-specific. They're
answering
not
well.
very good tags. We happen to have nice tags on the back of the skull.
I understand
Frequently,
what
the
she
tags
wants to
are,
do, but she
more,
is
reliable
not
when
testifying
their
well
skin is
on cross.
tighter over an area.
So on Maggie, you're saying one shot's going up and the other one's going down?
Yes.
Okay. Beg the court's indulgence.
So she is not testifying well. Poot has rattled her, and she said, I don't agree with the findings, but she said reasonable pathologists can differ, basically. And that is good for the defense
Thank you, that's all I have. Thank you, Doctor.
and not good
Just
for the state.
two questions.
Rise Above said, didn't they coach her?
5,500
No.
autopsies, you said, correct?
She's testified
Yes,
hundreds
and
of
since I
times.
was here last Navy, I've done another dozen, so over
No,
5,500.
they aren't going to coach.
And you rely on
Her, at all.
practical observations of actually observing the body, is that correct?
That's correct. I
They might after this.
do my autopsies.
Remind her.
Based on my experience and knowledge.
But
as a
she let
forensic
Poot rattle
pathologist,
her.
I know about the bodies, examining the bodies, that's what I rely on.
She should not have
you're-
watched Ronnie Crosby's testimony. The court asked if he had a point.
Just a couple more, Your Honor.
The court is
In
done.
your opinion, is there any way Paul's face would have remained intact if he had suffered
So far in
contact
the
wound
weeds.
from the top of the head?
No.
And in your opinion, is this obviously a wound in this direction as you've described?
Objection, Your Honor. Repetitive. She's testified 5 times, that's her opinion.
Objection is sustained.
Thank you, Doctor.
Further. Thank you, you may step down.
Poot's the one that comes
Your
with
next
the
witness.
repetitive objection.
Your Honor, state calls T.C. Smalls.
We've shit up everything right now. Good Lord. This is a new witness. I don't know who this is. I think that testimony was a mess for the state. I wonder if they'll regret it. I imagine that they will. We'll see that come back up. We'll see that come back up. I think Poot was saving all the fire for rebuttal, but he has to. The rebuttal case is where the state dismantles what the defense has done, and the defense doesn't want the ground they've made dismantled. But this is what this whole trial should have been like.
Full name for the record.
And I know y'all think Poot's a bully, but she, needed to hold her own. She's testified quite a lot, and she needed to trust the state to get to it on redirect.
C. Smalls. Folks call me T.C. Smalls.
How do you spell your last name?
Smalls.
Smalls. Perfect.
Sheriff Smalls, how you doing today?
I'm doing good.
All right. Tell the jury just a little bit about yourself. And I called you
are
sheriff,
you-
so if you could just kind of explain that
New
to them
witness,
a little
who
bit.
dis?
Okay, in law enforcement for 39 years, 8 months. I retired in December. 16 years of
Congratulations.
those 39 years was, I served as sheriff of Hampton County. Been in Hampton County all my life. I'm a pastor. Pretty much married, 4 kids, 7 grandkids, and just trying to enjoy some retirement. I retired December 31,
Congratulations.
31st day of December 2022, yeah.
He's
Well, I'm
like,
sorry to pull you back in.
I'm
You said
retired.
you just retired, huh?
I'm retired. Let me out.
You know the defendant, Alec Murdaugh.
Yes, I do.
Have you known him for years?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if it's Shirley's brother.
Did you ever have a conversation with Alec Murdaugh
Might be.
about him asking you permission or even telling you about installing blue lights in his private vehicle?
No, sir. I never had a conversation with Alec Murdaugh. Matter of fact, I never had a conversation with anyone in my 39 years about installing blue lights in their personal vehicle.
That's not something that's done, is it, sir?
Oh, no, no.
Did you know anything about the defendant claiming that you permitted him to do so until he testified to that last week?
Correct.
Didn't know anything about
Didn't
it?
know anything about it.
Wow.
And he never approached you at any point about that?
No, sir.
Spicy. I'm not surprised. I mean,
Did
I
he ever
guess
approach you
I'm encouraged that law enforcement wouldn't just let him run wild a little bit.
about
But Alex said it was authorized by this sheriff.
any threats or anything as a result of the boat case, the boat wreck case?
No, we never have.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Well-
Cross-examination.
I wouldn't. I wouldn't. Alex trying to tell Jim what happened. Huh, look at that look. That was a look.
Well, it's 12:01. Good afternoon, Sheriff Smalls.
How you doing?
My name's Jim Griffin.
Yeah, I'm sure he's
I'm a
aware.
little hoarse. This pollen's getting to me, but it won't take long. You've known Alec Murdaugh for many, many years, is
pollen
that
is-
correct?
Correct.
Reportedly quite
And
bad.
he was a volunteer solicitor in Hampton County, 14th Circuit.
Oh my God,
for a number of
solicitors
years,
don't get
correct?
blue lights in their car, Jim.
I realized he worked along with his father
Right.
as a, I don't know whether, I thought he was an assistant solicitor. But he worked along with his father as, in Hampton County.
But he held the position of assistant solicitor of 14th Circuit,
Yes, he did.
and he worked with his father
Right.
trying cases in Hampton County and perhaps Colleton County and other
Five.
places.
He tried
You aware of
5
that?
cases.
Correct. Yes, sir.
In
And are you
20
aware of
plus
him trying
years.
any cases when it wasn't with his father?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, and his father was, we're talking about Randolph Murdaugh,
Correct.
and he was previously solicitor, is that correct?
Right.
And are you aware that Alec Murdaugh was issued a badge for that position?
Badge doesn't mean you get
No, I
lights,
was not.
Okay.
Jim.
And there's some, you were questioned about permission that, whether you gave him permission to have a blue light installed in a vehicle, and you said you did not,
When you
correct?
gave him
Correct.
permission.
Do you know whether Anthony Russell gave him permission?
I can't answer that.
He
Now, who's
said
Anthony
you.
Russell?
Well, during my time when I was sheriff, Anthony Russell was a captain in my administration. He later became sheriff after I retired. He ran and he won the office of sheriff, and he holds the office now.
And he was.
Oh, now he's, Alec
maybe
is
not
changing
your
who gave him permission?
right-hand man, but he was pretty high up in your
He
administration.
was a captain.
Okay. And then Chauncey Solomon, what was his position?
Chauncey Solomon was a lieutenant.
And Perry Singleton, he passed away, what was his position?
He was a lieutenant.
And you know that Deputy Russell, Deputy Solomon, Deputy Singleton were very close to Alec Murdaugh? Were you aware of that?
Well, I knew they knew him. I don't know how close they were.
Okay. And did Eddie Gibson install the blue lights on the vehicles for the sheriff's department?
Not for my cars. Most of my
my
vehicles, light was done with a company out of Orangeburg. And then later we started working with a gentleman by the name of Charles Mitchell, that installed lights. And he out of, I think, Hardyville or Bluffton.
So that's not who they used either.
So you don't know who do you know who Eddie Gibson
Oh, I
is?
know who Eddie Gibson. He worked for me at one time.
And when he worked for you, did he install blue lights? He worked on the vehicles, the fleet of vehicles?
No, not my vehicles.
Well, when he worked for you, what did he do?
He was a deputy sheriff. He patrolled.
This sheriff
And-
is going to be very,
So like, you're unfamiliar that at any point
Very
in time, Mr. Murdaugh had a
consistent.
blue light in his vehicle.
I never had any knowledge that he had blue lights in his vehicle.
what would you have
Thank
done if you
That's all the
knew?
questions I have.
Wait, what would you have done if you knew? Damn it, what would you have done if you knew? Is it appropriate?
May we approach very quickly?
Bridget is asking, why do the blue lights matter? Well, it seemed like Murdaugh was rolling around impersonating a law enforcement officer with his badge on his dashboard, a gun in his car, and blue lights on it. He had emergency, like code 3 police vehicle lights installed in his personal vehicle, in the vehicle his law firm owned. It's completely inappropriate. And he lied about who gave him permission. He tried to make it seem that it's okay. This goes to Alec believing he's above the law, and they're going to argue it in closing. So it matters that he was never given approval, and that he just got up on the stand and testified that the sheriff gave him approval, possibly not thinking that the sheriff's going to come in and say, no, the fuck I didn't.
Sheriff Smalls, when did you retire again?
I retired December the 31st, 2022.
2022, so just a couple months ago.
Right.
Thank you for coming today.
Thank you, sir.
No, you are.
Thank you, sir.
I wanted him to ask.
Call your next witness.
That was witness 3 of 7. Who? I couldn't hear that at all. We're now on witness number 4. For the state said they have 7. And again, they're just pulling at the lies Alec told on the stand. Denise said you can't just have blue lights installed in your vehicle. Correct.
Whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
You witness, sir, please be seated. State your full name for the record and spell last name, please.
Paul McManigal, McManigal.
All right. Good afternoon. Sergeant McManigal, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And you're employed at the Charleston County Sheriff's Office?
I am.
And you testified previously in this trial, correct?
Yes, I have.
Just briefly remind the jury exactly what
Who you are
topic you
again?
testified on earlier. Briefly, please.
I was tasked with redacting Alec Murdaugh's cell phone records to remove any possible client-attorney privileged information.
All right. And during that testimony, you were not qualified as an expert, correct?
That is correct.
All right. But you have been qualified in previous trials.
Yes, I have.
Are we going to try to qualify him
And
now?
Approximately how many times have you been qualified as an expert previously
gosh.
in other trials?
About 10.
10 times. Okay. And is that in cell phone forensics?
Part of it was about, refer to my notes.
Let me refer to my notes as to what I've been qualified in.
6 times of that was in cell phones forensics. The other was crime scene investigation.
Okay. All right. And just let's briefly go down as quick as you can. Let's go through your training experience in cell phone forensics, please.
They're going to qualify me as an expert for what?
I'm currently assigned to the United States Secret Service Cyber Fraud Task Force, which is where I received most of my training.
A lot of them are.
I have been trained in basic computer evidence recovery, advanced computer forensics, oxygen forensic suite training, blacklight
I don't
examiner,
think you can either,
advanced mobile device examiner,
but they're doing it.
Celebrate physical and logical examination, XRY certification training.
There's a lot of things,
Macintosh triage
Rob,
and
that have
imaging,
happened in this trial that I've never seen
Apple
before.
iDevice forensics,
Like a lot. We've learned a lot
Celebrate
together
advanced
here.
JTAG extraction, network intrusion response, vehicle forensics,
Glad you landed okay, Octo.
digital video recorder evidence and recovery,
Okay.
Ransomware investigation response
Wonderful.
training.
I love
and
your
several
training.
other webinars.
Anyone who
At
works
this time,
in law.
state would seek
It-
to admit Sergeant McManigal.
I don't think you
as
can
an
do that.
expert in
Hold
cell
on.
phone
Let's see if we get the
forensics.
objection.
So qualified.
The objection was no objection. Great.
Sergeant McManigal. Last week, you were present.
A very
when,
good reason to not let your witnesses
gentleman
sit in the
named Michael
courtroom
Sturgis testified for the defense.
is
correct?
because
That is correct.
Coots
And
Cross
specifically, he
of
testified
Ronnie
about
Crosby
this feature in iPhone.
has tainted
known
all
as
of the other
raise-
witnesses because they are now coming in
raise to weight.
defensive.
Raised to weight,
Yes,
correct?
sir.
And briefly explain to
a
jury
reason to
what
keep
that
your
function
witnesses
is
out of
and
the
what it
courtroom.
serves.
And it should
as
be,
in the
even if
cell
there's no
phone.
exclusion
For
order,
the
keep them
iPhone,
out of the
excuse me.
courtroom.
Raise to wake is when the cell phone is laying down and you pick it up. It
This guy's an expert now.
realizes that somebody's picking up the device and tries to assist by turning on the display so that you could possibly unlock it with your face unlock.
All right. Or read a notification possibly if there's a notification on the screen.
That's correct.
And so it's designed to turn on that screen when it thinks someone's picking up the phone to look at the screen, correct?
Not
That is
always.
correct.
All right. There's been previous testimony, I think, by Mr. Sturgis and other experts in this case that the iPhone, if the screen is off, it will not record an orientation change, correct?
If the screen is off, it will not record.
Yeah, I'm
my-
very
agree with that-
surprised,
that
but
opinion?
there's no
Yes.
objection.
And you were asked after Mr.
odd.
Sturgis' testimony to investigate a little bit more about this
Oh,
raised
this cross
to wake
might be
feature,
brutal.
correct?
I was.
And specifically, as demonstrated with the jurors, the screen's going to turn on when the phone is picked up gently, correct?
That is correct.
Because the phone thinks it's being picked up to be looked at, correct?
That is correct.
You're asked to investigate with a test device whether that screen lights up every time a phone is picked up in a more violent fashion or quicker fashion, correct?
Correct. When the phone is picked up more aggressively or moved more aggressively, the device will not turn on the screen.
And that's because the way it raised to wake
Did not turn
feature
on.
is based off of what
Until
in
I
the cell
just
phone?
looked
What's
at
telling it to wake up? What
The
sensor?
accelerometer primarily.
Okay. And so the accelerometer is
Fair.
sensing motion, correct?
Sometimes it does,
Correct.
sometimes it
And so if
doesn't.
it senses a slight amount of motion, it's going to turn the screen on because it thinks someone's picking up to look at it, correct?
Can't lead the witness.
And so if the cell phone only detects a slight amount of motion, what does it do? What does the iPhone do?
So if the iPhone registers a slight amount of motion, it thinks it's being picked up, so it will turn on the screen. But if it's being picked up more aggressively, it won't. And that's a battery protection feature. If you had the iPhone in your pocket and you were jogging, you don't want the screen to stay on the whole time.
No,
So
Rob.
when the phone is moving more aggressively, the screen does not turn on.
Motion denied. Today's spicy.
And so you're asked to do some tests in your lab with a test device, correct?
That is correct. I obtained an iPhone 11 Pro Max, which
The
is the
law
same make
nerds.
and model as the phone that Maggie had.
All right. And what
The
software
law nerds
version
right
was on
now.
your test device?
The software that was on my device is iOS 14.8.
It's the gentle motion.
The one that was on Maggie's was
It
iOS 14.6.
wants to be treated nicely.
So the iOS that was on my device that I tested was slightly newer.
Okay. And did you perform a series of tests with various motions and various throws with this phone to determine, and were you able to develop
Sir.
an opinion of
Sir, did
when
you
the screen
yeet?
might come on and when it might not?
Sir, did you yeet?
Rule 5, this is an experiment on evidence, actually something seized.
Good objection, Barber.
Provided this.
Objection is overruled. Rule 5 does not apply.
Thank you.
Sir, did you yeet?
So
He's
you-
an expert,
So you
though.
did perform a number of tests, correct?
Yes, sir. Performed many tests. Over the
Tell us about
weekend.
your
I would
yeeting.
Pick it up and shake it, pick it up and throw it. I threw it off to my desk. I knocked it off of my desk.
Yeet.
I tried to flip it end over end. I tried to throw it like a Frisbee. I did each
Yeet.
one at least 10 to 20 times.
Okay. And were the results 100% conclusively? I mean, did the phone do the same thing every time?
No, not at all. Sometimes the screen would turn on. When I threw it, land face up, and then the screen would turn on. But a lot of the times I would throw it, and the screen would not turn on. It depends on how the accelerometer registered that movement.
The phone can be
So,
yeeted
based
from
off
a
your
car
test,
without
is
turning
it your
on, is
opinion
the
that,
point.
An
That is the
iPhone,
whole point.
Of the
Yeet.
same make and model as Maggie's could be thrown and the screen not turned on.
Can't lead the witness.
Did you develop an opinion about
you develop
whether
an opinion?
the screen would turn on every time a phone was thrown?
If the phone is thrown, the screen does not always turn on. In my experimentation, I determined that when the phone is thrown more like a Frisbee, 9 out of 10 times, the screen does not turn on.
Yeah,
The
yeet.
times that it did turn on most often was when I pick it up and tried to shake it, then the screen would come on briefly.
So, yeet.
But 9 out of 10 times, when you toss a phone like a Frisbee, the screen would not turn on, correct?
That is correct.
Not far from the state.
Oh, boy. I like Barber. I'm ready for some Barber sass. I gotta be honest, I like his sass. I'm ready for it.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Barber is,
When
I
you
think, my
performed
favorite on the
these
defense
experiments,
team.
did you
These experiments.
record them in any way?
I did not.
You didn't?
Did you
Did
turn
you
over a
record
report?
doing any of this?
I did not.
How did you keep track then?
consider video recording any of these experiments?
Actually, it never crossed my mind.
You just did
Really?
the experiments and then just sort of orally relay when you could have had a video to show us?
That is correct.
Barbara's
If you were going to throw
sarcastic.
a phone out from a moving vehicle, wouldn't you need to pick it up, to toss it?
Certainly.
And if I understand the previous testimony, when you pick it up, the screen comes on.
When you pick it up gently.
So if
Yeet!
you pick it up to toss it out the window while you're driving, you got to pick it up. Is that correct?
Correct. And
Yes.
if you pick it up aggressively, it will not.
But not always.
Not always.
Sometimes will, sometimes won't.
Correct.
According to the experiments that you conducted since, when did you do these experiments?
I started it Friday afternoon and into Saturday.
Oh, so just.
So you did these experiments this last weekend.
Correct.
You did not record any data.
I did not.
You just played with the phone and are coming here to express your observations.
That's correct.
That's correct. See, when you look at an expert
Do
testimony.
you have the phone that you used to do these experiments with you?
Not with me.
I'm pausing real quick. When you look at an expert testimony, look at the way he's answering versus the pathologist. He's not backing away from what he did. He's just saying, yes, this is right. Yes, this is what I did. He's not contradicting the way the defense is characterizing it. He's just answering the question. So that I appreciate. So you just played with the phone. Yep, that's what I did. He's not, it's just a much cleaner way for an expert to testify. So this versus the pathologist cross-examination is very different because Barbara is still bringing his own snark. So I'm going to put us on 1.25 just because I had to interject.
Are you aware of
On the
how the phone in
noticeable
this,
differences.
Maggie's phone in this case, how it, when it was located, what its position was? Have you seen the photos?
I have.
Or was it screen up?
It was screen up.
I want Justine to do these experiments.
Would you agree then that it had to be thrown from a screen up position because if it was screened down and you turned it over to throw it out, the screen would come on?
Of course not. It can tumble through the air.
So if the phone was screened down in the car
Right, that's
and it
right.
ends up screen up over here, it has to
Right
turn
that
over,
way.
right?
At least one time, yes, sir.
And do you, I guess, disagree with the previous testimony and demonstration that when you take the phone and turn it over, the screen comes on?
It doesn't always.
No, when you pick it up gently, the screen does come on.
We say pick it up. If you rotate it on that axis so that it's screen down to screen up, does the screen come on?
Well, you
If I
can,
pick it up gently and rotate it, the screen comes on. If I
Damn
pick it
it!
up aggressively, it does not.
Janet.
And if it's facing you and rotates 90 degrees, does the screen come on?
Only if you do it gently. Again, if you do it aggressively,
How
it will not.
gently? Did you measure any of these forces?
I did not.
You just threw the phone around in your office?
Absolutely.
So you didn't record what you were doing, and you did not measure any data.
I
Was
did
this
not.
because you were afraid that you would have to disclose that data if you recorded it?
I don't know if
Of
my
course
phone
not,
went on
no.
or not.
Do you normally do experiments and don't record any data or video, record anything?
It never crossed my mind to record video.
Do you believe
did.
that
I
you would
threw my
have to
phone.
disclose that data if you had recorded it?
What's the objection?
I believe so, yes.
So the reason you didn't record data was that it would have to be produced, and then we could examine it and discover whether or not it was accurate.
No,
You
sir.
avoided that by not recording anything, correct?
No, sir.
Good
That's not
questions.
correct.
Why didn't you record any data?
It did not cross my mind to video record my experiments.
He
I
was
just
not
did
asked
the
to.
experiments to determine whether or not
And
the
you
screen
didn't,
would
you didn't
come on.
occur to you to measure how fast you were moving the phone? Maybe to even find out what is that threshold you claim where the phone goes from
it
turning
going
on to not
across?
turning on? Exactly when does that happen? You have no idea, do you?
No, sir. It would take me much longer to do these experiments to determine the exact speed and force required to turn the display on versus not.
Did you discover any, or did you attempt to locate any documentation regarding the raise to wake feature on the iPhone?
The phone is fine.
I did. I tried extensively. I reached out to several different forensic surface focus groups that I'm a part of, and we were not able to find any white papers on the subject.
So you were unable to find any actual data on it, so you resorted to throwing your phone around alone? Was anyone with you when you did this?
No, sir. I was alone in my office.
Throwing your phone
So you're
around.
alone in your office,
Yeeting
throwing the
phones.
phone around, taking no measurements, recording nothing over the weekend, and then you come in here and testify as an expert as to what the phone will do,
Yes.
That's correct.
and testify that it's different than what we've seen it do right here in this courtroom.
That's correct.
That's correct.
Have you ever done this, anything like this before? You'd mentioned testifying 6 times before. Did you ever, was this your expert testimony in any other case?
My expert testimony in other cases was always about cell phone reports and the data contained therein. I've never actually done physical experimentation to come up with a realistic result.
So your previous experience was extracting data from cell phones, is that accurate?
This
Correct.
is why they didn't object.
Is that what you're trained to do?
Yes, sir.
They're just going to roast him instead and make us state look desperate.
Yes, sir.
Fair plan.
Are you an engineer?
No, sir.
Do you have any certification in engineering?
No, sir.
Do you have any degree, academic qualifications in engineering?
No, sir.
Have you ever worked as an engineer?
No, sir.
You're trained in extracting data from the cell phone.
That's correct.
Clean,
And when
easy
it comes to
answers.
tossing it around and seeing how it moves, you don't know anything more than anyone else, do you?
No, sir.
So you had this,
So you're just playing with your phone then?
Your Honor, based on the previous answer, I would move to strike the expert opinion.
You should have voir dired him.
The witness just testified he has no expertise in this. That
You should have
just
voir
said
dired
he
him.
has no more knowledge about this than anyone else in the
You
court.
didn't object.
That his expertise is in extracting data from the cell phone. And that this opinion is therefore outside of his
You didn't object.
expertise.
You
and
should
this
have
is
voir
an
dired him
admissible
then.
opinion
Previously
testimony.
stipulated that he's an expert.
You did.
Yes, Your Honor, in extracting data from the cell phone, which was before we got to this testimony about.
Says the state.
Your Honor, this witness performed a series of tests. He's
It's a good cross.
reporting on, I'm sorry, Your Honor.
We know that. He's testified to that.
And he's
They're in front of the
expressed
jury.
his opinion of what the phone will do in those series of tests. It's not an absolute opinion, but I think his opinion of when the screen would light up is something he tested and something he can testify about.
Anything further?
Your Honor, simply that
This
when
is-
he was proffered as an expert before this testimony, it was in extracting data from the cell phone, not in engineering, electrical engineering, which is where he's gone now.
Objections overruled.
So you just
I
testified
don't
you have no more knowledge about.
know if the
engineering the
objection
iPhone
matters, other than letting it
than
look
anyone here,
ridiculous
correct?
in front of the jury.
I know more about how the iPhone works, but no, sir, I'm not an engineer.
You're not an engineer.
This is more software.
When you said that the
Barber did make his point.
accelerometers
Rob, I agree.
are what trigger this feature,
And it looks just kind of ridiculous at this point.
how do you know that?
That's from data that's on Apple's website.
So you found something on Raise the Wake that says that the accelerometers are what trigger this feature?
No, sir, that's the only thing that is capable of detecting motion on the phone, besides GPS.
And you have no idea how much motion is required because you didn't measure it, correct?
No, sir, I don't know the threshold.
Okay. You, this weekend, sat around your office
And
by
threw the-
yourself.
threw the phone around.
Reporting nothing, tossing the phone around here, and are now reporting those results as an expert in what?
Yes.
In cell phone forensics, I understand how cell phones operate more than most people.
Do you understand the electrical engineering? Do you have any background in that?
I am not an engineer, no, sir.
Do you know how the accelerometers in the iPhone work? Can you tell us?
Not exactly, no, sir. But I know that they exist, and I know that's how the iPhone determines motion.
So there's an unknown device within the phone that detects motion in a way that you don't understand, and some amount of motion that you don't know how much because you didn't measure it does something that only you saw in your office this weekend.
Correct.
Is that
Well,
correct?
no, I know what it is. It's the accelerometer. The accelerometer is what detects the motion, and that's what causes the iPhone to race
Barbara's
the
done
wake.
a
How
good
does
job
an
of making this
accelerometer
look
detect motion?
preposterous.
I'm not an engineer. I do not know how it detects motion. I just know that it does.
But sir, you really haven't said anything you couldn't quickly find out on Google, isn't that correct?
Probably, yes, sir.
So you
Probably.
have no expertise
Oh,
in this.
shit.
I have expertise in how cell phones work.
What do you mean by that? How cell phones work?
So I can tell
Barbara's
you all
not
about
gonna
the
stop.
NFC
This is preposterous.
databases. I can tell you about the way iPhones, or not iPhones. I can tell you the way some software is written, what kind of code it's written in. I can tell you how data is stored on the cell phone, the programming that's involved with the iOS feature, and the different databases that are involved.
Can you tell us that if somebody was driving down the road, picked up a phone that was either on the seat or pulled it out of a pocket or something like that, and while continuing to drive, threw it out the window, that the screen would not come on if it landed face up?
I cannot tell you that it will not come on. I can tell you that it might not come on.
Right.
Because when you were alone, throwing your phone around, you think it didn't come on sometimes.
Objection sustained.
Throwing the phone around. Barbara's just going to sit down and be like, what do you want me to do?
Further.
Just real quick.
Just stop.
Mr. Barber was asking about picking up a phone and then tossing it.
You're
about
not going
raise
to
a
fix
weight.
this.
What Mr. Sturgis demonstrated jury was a gentle pickup, correct?
That is correct.
You test a more violent pickup or a more aggressive pickup and then moving to a throwing motion, correct?
Yes, sir. I just picked it up and threw it.
All right, and based off of what you tested and you observed, the screen does not come on most of the time?
When
do
you
that?
throw it like a frisbee, it's most of the time. When you throw it end over end, it's more than half the time it will not come on.
All right. And Mr. Barber asked you several times whether you knew more than anybody else about these cell phones, correct?
Correct.
And in particular, in this instance, you do know more than most people because you performed a series of tests, correct?
Objection sustained.
You performed multiple tests over the weekend, correct?
That's correct.
Objection sustained.
What did you do this weekend?
This weekend, I performed multiple tests
sat
on
in the house and threw the
device
phone
matching
around.
the same make and model as Maggie Murdaugh's to determine whether or not the raise to wake feature would
Asked and
always
answered.
enable the screen to come on whenever the phone is thrown.
I've got a
And,
poll for y'all.
Mr. Barber asked you several times about being an engineer, correct?
Correct.
And did you hear anything out of Mr. Sturgis last week that indicated he was an engineer?
No, sir.
And do you
Poll
you
is
testified
up.
you don't know exactly how the accelerometer works, correct?
That is correct.
Is that knowledge necessary to observe when a screen turns on and when it does not turn on?
No, sir.
Not further, Mr.
Anything further?
Barber's kind of great. It was a good cross. Barber's like, this is preposterous. And the jury will either be like, this is preposterous, or the jury will be like, oh, good point. I wanted to know what would happen if you threw a phone around. Stop the jury
How
from
many
doing their own
times do you have to run
experiments.
this experiment for your results to be statistically reliable?
I'm sorry, say it again?
How many times do you need to run this experiment for your results to be statistically reliable?
More than 10?
What your
What?
basis for that is?
Does it take that long to figure out that sometimes it turns on and sometimes it doesn't?
Do you know how to measure reliability using statistics?
I took statistics in college, yes, sir.
So did I.
Do you know how to measure reliability using
I
statistics?
remember none.
How do you do it?
Well, you have to have a performative sample. You have to have a default group that is has no change to it, and then you have to have your sample group where you actually perform a change. You take the data, you put it into a formula. It gives you a degree of reliability.
Did you do that here?
No, sir.
No further questions.
Step down.
Do you know how to have statistical significance? Yes. Did you do that here? No. And that's the last
Call your next
question.
witness.
Your Honor, State calls Marc Ball.
The state has single-handedly made themselves look like they are overreaching today. I don't think that was necessary. I don't think the state is confident in their case. If you're confident in your case, why would you do that? All right, let's see what Marc Ball has to say. I'm actually really interested in this evidence or this witness. That was a fucking mess.
Testimony you give today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help you God. I do. All right. Mark, you just thank you. You'll be seated and state your full name. for the
Oh,
record.
Alec is definitely smiley. His lawyers are going to fucking town.
It's Marc Ball, last name B-A-L-L.
How you doing today?
All right,
You'd be doing better if I wasn't here.
buckle up.
Well, we'll get you out of here pretty quickly. I wanted to just ask you
Lies.
a few very quick questions in
5 of
response
7.
to the defense case. And first question I'd ask you is, prior
ask it.
to the murders of Maggie and Paul, did you ever hear Alec express any distrust of SLED?
No, sir.
Can you tell the jury what your observations were of his relationship with the law enforcement community?
Oh,
I thought it was
where's
very
Poot?
good. I mean, he interacted with them regularly,
Boot scooted
as
right out
most
of court.
civil lawyers do, and then with his side gig as, solicitor, he obviously had interaction with them as well.
Do you remember coming to find out that Alec had installed blue lights in the private vehicle?
Yes.
And can you tell the jury roughly how long ago that was?
I can't tell you precisely. I can tell you it wasn't the vehicle that's been seized. He got that vehicle in the end of December before the murders occurred in June, so
So
you'd have that
relatively new
vehicle
vehicle.
about 6 months roughly. And it was on the vehicle that was prior to that, and it was a Suburban as well. I don't remember when in that chain that they were actually installed, but it was some time.
Do you have some property around in this area?
I do.
And are you a hunter and an outdoorsman and shooter?
I am.
All right. Do you ever shoot hogs and other nuisance creatures?
A bunch of them.
And when you're riding around looking for hogs, what can you do that in the daytime?
Yes.
And is it not uncommon to see hogs during the daytime?
I shot 2 weeks ago. I shot 5
During the daytime?
during the day, 4:30. They come out, you know, all different times, but and the more pressure you put on them, the more nocturnal they'll become. But they eat all the time, and they root, and the rooting's what the real problem is. They root up your roads and fields and everything else.
Have you ever known the defendant? You've known the defendant for how long?
34 years.
You aware the defendant and his family had a number of long guns, rifles, and shotguns?
Yes.
Have you ever known him to talk much about target shooting a pistol?
No, sir.
Oh. Okay.
Do you know what Paul's weapon of choice was when shooting hogs?
Shooting.
Hogs.
The 300 blackouts were bought for hog hunting. I assume Paul would have shot him with anything he had. But
That makes sense.
That's what the 300 blackouts were bought for.
Did you have any conversations with the defendant when he was purchasing the original 2 blackouts as it relates to hog hunting?
I did. I'm not a big 300 blackout fan, and I told him that, and he bought them anyway. And I think his cousin actually put them together, who was a game warden.
It goes to Alec not shooting with
And
handguns
the
much. Going to
time,
the expert
after the
testimony
murders, did
yesterday.
you have a number of conversations
why
with
would
the
somebody bring
defendant
2
about his
long guns?
activities
That's
that
what
night?
that's going to.
I did.
I
I had that night and then subsequent days.
And did you go over to those in fairly some sort of detail?
Yes, sir. You know, at times, sometimes it wasn't detailed. You know, it would just be checking on him to see how he was doing and to see, you know, if they'd come up with any leads or where things stood. I mean, everybody was trying to figure this out. I mean, this is one of those lightning strikes in life that just jolts you and there's no rhyme or reason.
What, if anything, did he say about whether or not he checked Maggie and Paul before he called 911?
As I testified before, my recollection of it was that he testified, or he told me, not testified, but he told me that he went to Maggie and then he went to Paul, rolled Paul over. His phone, I didn't hear the phone the first time he said that. I think that was about the second or third time. But I also wasn't really listening. I was listening to what occurred, you know, who did this, why would they have done this. But the second time he went, it was reversed, where he went to Paul and then to Maggie. And like I told you before, I don't know whether that's just a slip, you know, from one to the other or vice versa. But he definitely went, checked on him, then called 911.
And that goes to
When
the
was the
timing
first
on the
time you
GPS and
heard
that
his
Alec changed his story because of the
Admission and
GPS
claim now
info.
that he did go to the kennels around 8:44 p.m.
Thursday, last
This past
Thursday.
Thursday.
Yeah.
And was he clear prior to that he did not go down there in his conversations with you?
Never said anything about that or any reason for it. It just, he'd never been there.
You said you've known the defendant for how long?
34 years.
Knowing what you know now, was he able to look you in the eye and lie convincingly and effortlessly to you?
Yep. Are you going to state the grounds?
Objections overruled.
I mean, it's pretty obvious. I didn't know the stealing. I didn't know any of that. And, you know, it's not the way a plaintiff's practice works. You work on your own cases unless you're working with somebody else. And so you wouldn't necessarily be talking about his particular
At
cases.
some point.
It's sort of yes and no. I mean, obviously, a lot of things that I was told and a lot of things just
At some point, the
weren't
state
there.
has to
I mean,
stop
the
asking what they
blue
asked.
lights, the reasoning for the blue lights, the money missing from our account when he cashed the 2 checks, all of those types of things.
Didn't know him at all.
Obviously they weren't truthful.
And did you feel like you knew the defendant well prior to June?
Sure thought I did.
Right of defense.
I think the handgun was fair rebuttal. I think checking Maggie and Paul was fair rebuttal. The rest of it got into wandering a bit. I don't know where Poot went. Poot's not in court. Jim Griffin's doing the cross of Mark Ball. This was a friend group that spent a lot of time together.
Labor Day weekend, when Alex was confronted by the law firm.
Well, it was before Labor Day.
Yeah,
It was Thursday.
Friday or Thursday before.
It was the Friday before.
Mark Ball has gone calm.
You ever talked to him since the day he was confronted?
I talked to him on that Monday when I believe that he and Randy and John were going to, I believe, Atlanta, to the facility down there. And I got a phone call, I don't know, 1 or 2 o'clock, whatever it was. I was coming from the office. I'd
After the roadside incident.
been digging through his files and stuff, and I got a call. It registered as John Marvin, and I picked it up and said, "What you need, John?" And it was Alec.
And that would have been Labor Day 2021?
That would have been Labor Day 2021.
And since Labor Day 2021, you've not spoken with Alec?
I have not.
And
Brittany, the prosecution has not
since
done a
Labor
great
Day
job
2021,
today.
Alec has either been
They
in
haven't.
rehab or jail.
Definitely
is
not
that
team
correct?
defense.
He has been.
Not team prosecution.
To my knowledge, I mean.
The prosecution
you've
has
not
not
had
done
any
well in their rebuttal
opportunity-
today. That
I mean, he's been
is
represented
not
by
an opinion.
counsel as well.
That
right?
is,
Sure. I mean, I
It's
wouldn't
just-
expect to.
some of these witnesses have
He's
been a
being charged
mess.
with crimes.
Right. So you wouldn't have any expectation that since September
with Rob on this
2021,
one.
that he would come to you,
This
talk
has
to you
not
about
been
whether
good
it was on
rebuttal.
video, whether it was at the kennels or where he was, correct?
No, not since September.
Okay.
This rebuttal
You
has
were
not
asked
been good for the
questions about
prosecution. You might
Alex.
not like that.
Distrust of SLED, and you testified that he had a good relationship with law enforcement.
He did. I never heard any mistrust of SLED or anybody else
Fair.
Well, let's talk about that.
from him. I mean,
Well, did Alec take the position that his son Paul was wrongfully charged with the,
Oh my God,
for
the
felony
camera.
boating under the influence causing a death and serious bodily injury as a result of the boating accident?
yes, I mean, I think he disputed that and was planning a vigorous defense of that.
And that happened,
I agree that
those
Crosby was
charges have been
good.
pending since
Everybody else was a
2019,
mess.
is that correct?
4 years ago, a couple days ago.
Right.
Yeah, Crosby was the best
And so
rebuttal
he
witness
did
so far.
express some dissatisfaction over that case, correct?
I'm
Well,
sorry.
over that
I
case, but
can't.
I don't know that it was.
I can't with the boot scooting camera.
Over that case, correct?
Well, over that case, but I don't know that it was directed at law enforcement or who it was directed at. It was just, it wasn't, he didn't specifically say or didn't say,
Going to distrust of SLED.
I distrust SLED or I distrust Beaufort County Sheriff's Department or DNR or whoever. It was just, he thought that there
DNR
was
investigated
defensible,
the boat crash.
it was a defensible case, the criminal charges against Paul.
As you know,
and,
Jim, you were his lawyer.
You know,
DNR's
there
Department
was
of Natural
this
Resources
back
not
and forth as to whether
do not
it
resuscitate.
could have been one of two people driving.
And you were informed, I believe, sometime in the spring of 2021, that SLED was actually investigating Alec for obstructing the boating accident investigation, right?
No, sir.
You were not aware of that?
I was not aware of that.
Do you know whether Alec was aware of that?
I have no idea what he was. He never said that to me. I didn't know about anything to do with the investigation until
Fair.
the grand jury, when I went to the grand jury.
Were you aware that he and his father sat in on the criminal prosecution of his good friend Greg Alexander?
I became aware of that.
During this
Well, back
testimony?
up. Yeah, I knew they went over there. I didn't know much about the detail until after the
So the crosses you didn't really know.
SLED came in after the 3rd of September 2021.
And Chief Alexander was prosecuted after SLED investigated him, correct?
I think that's the case, yes.
And that Alec and his father thought that Chief Alexander was wrongfully accused. Are you aware of that?
I don't know what they thought about it. I know that they were close to Greg Alexander, and Greg Alexander ultimately got off on a jury trial.
Now we do know that the Colleton County
Got
Sheriff's
off is
Department in
interesting.
this
Not
case
was acquitted, not was
recused themselves
vindicated.
because Alec
Got off.
Let me correct something. I said that he got off. He was found not guilty. I mean, I don't want there to be a negative implication. I know Greg as well.
There was a negative
Sure.
implication.
Well, thank you for clarifying that. And we do know that Sheriff Buddy Hill and the entire Colleton County Sheriff's Department recused themselves in this case because of Alec's close relationship with the Colleton County Sheriff's Department and law enforcement. Is that right?
I know they recused themselves, and I know they called in SLED that night. I wasn't privy to the reasoning, but I would make that assumption.
And there are different levels of law enforcement.
No, I don't have an earpiece in Marc Paul's ear.
Agencies, right? There's the,
Sure.
The things
say
that stuck
the
out to me as an
Hampton
attorney stuck out to
County
him as an
Police
attorney.
Department, Hampton County Sheriff's Department, and Alec had a really good relationship at that level with those folks, correct?
He did.
And he had a really good relationship with the Colleton County Sheriff's Department, to your knowledge?
He did as far as I know, yes.
Right. But I think I covered that. So you mentioned that hogs
This goes to Alec.
become nocturnal when there's a lot of pressure on them?
No, he
They
didn't.
can.
Oh,
They
did he?
can.
It depends
that
on a
was
lot
the
of
other
things. Like
witness.
right now, the swamp's up. They're much more on the hill
Right.
than when times are dry. They go out into the flat swamp and root up everything out there.
And the pressure that you're referring to
This is going
hunting
to
pressure.
Alec's lying to
And
law enforcement because he didn't trust
Are
them.
you aware that Paul put a lot
This
of
is all
pressure on the
about-
hogs at Moselle?
I knew
All
Paul
about-
hunted hogs a lot of places. At one point, Paul had
That kennel
hog
video.
dogs. and
That's
would
what all
hunt
that was about.
On people's property. He came to my property, he went to Ronnie's. But how much pressure they were putting on them, I don't know because I wasn't over there.
They're arguing
I
about
mean,
the
I'd
hogs,
ridden
about
around
the
property
reasonableness of what guns would have
several
been carried
times,
around the day of
but
the
I
murder.
never-
So,
It wasn't about hog hunting.
Sure. And I want to ask you about the Moselle property track. So, we've all seen drone photos of the house and the kennels and Moselle Road. That's sort of right in front of
Yeah,
the
back to hogs.
the
Sorry,
residence.
chat.
Yes.
Very. And then if you're sort of looking from a drone, and we've seen some aerial photos,
Andrea, I agree.
I guess if you're headed south, there's the Dove Field right adjacent. Is that south, I would think?
Yeah, at least east.
Okay. And then, back
One of
behind
the law partners.
the Moselle residence, I think there's a river.
Well, there's a swamp.
The swamp
And then
again.
the big Salkehatchie, is back in there.
Are these the hogs
So
in question?
the swamp begins behind the house and goes.
These are not the hogs you're looking for. Oh my God,
I
I
know,
don't
is that
care about
west?
where the hogs are with relation to the
Towards south.
swamp.
If the runway's running east and west,
Okay.
then it would be
But
south.
But the swamp is behind the house.
It's behind the house.
Okay. And across the street from the house is duck pond and shooting range and no swamp.
Correct, in timberland.
And all the hogs are going to be behind the house.
They're all over. They're
They're hogs.
There's a watershed ditch in there. They follow wherever, but predominantly they seek refuge or whatnot in the swamp, but they can be anywhere. I have them, there's gum ponds and every place else, and they
say
just
gum?
trample wherever they want to go. But
The hogs do
You're
what the
right,
fuck
by
they
and
want. They're
large,
like honey badgers, apparently.
they're in the swamp because it's wooded.
Hogs don't give a shit.
Right.
and thick.
And it probably keeps them cool
And
in the mud,
in
in
the
the
month
water.
of June, pretty warm, is it not?
It usually is here in South Carolina.
Yes, it is. And do hogs stay in the swamp more in the heat
Not-
of the summer?
I haven't noticed that, and I've killed probably well over 1,000 hogs.
All right.
And so we trap them all the way through. I mean, I've got 2 traps and, well, actually I got 6 traps, but I mean, I trap them, I shoot them, they're just a scourge. They eat everything, they root up your roads, they get in your pine trees when
Answer
they're
that
little, they
later.
root them up. They're a teetotal nuisance. I carry a
Teetotal
gun with me
nuisance.
most of the time.
Do you have a gun with a thermal scope so you hunt them at night?
I do have a thermal, and then I have others.
Yeah, Mr. Small, is there ever a time when you don't have a gun with you when you're traveling around?
Only if I forget it,
Okay.
but
That's what I thought.
usually I have one.
And you understood that Maggie and Alec got 300 blackouts from Paul and Buster
Ah,
for Christmas one year, and they came with thermal scopes.
I do.
And are you aware that Paul
the replacement
had
at a red
his
dot.
lost or stolen,
I was,
and then he received a replacement without a thermal scope,
right. My understanding was it had a red dot.
and that he didn't use that one very often. He used Buster's that did have the thermal scope. You've learned that?
I've heard bits and pieces. I haven't been watching everything, but I did.
Right.
Somebody told me that, or I heard it, one or the other.
And Buster's is sitting here in the courtroom. Were you aware of that?
I didn't. I assumed y'all had.
Okay.
I know that the black one was taken from the house because I was standing there.
Right. That's fair.
Amy, I'm glad to know that the Milwaukee Dancing
But you
Grannies were at
wouldn't
the
use
New
a
Orleans
thermal.
Mardi Gras Parade, or at a
In the daytime.
New Orleans Mardi
for
Gras
most
Parade. I
part.
love
mean,
that.
You could, I suppose, but
I'm sure they were celebrated.
it wouldn't serve much purpose.
Thanks, Octo.
I'm
good.
There's been some discussion about Alex emoting and being emotional during trials. He's an emotional person altogether, isn't he?
I think he probably is.
I mean, you remember him speaking at when his dad got the order of the Palmetto, for example.
I do.
And he'd get emotional then.
Yeah.
And you remember him speaking at the trial lawyers after he had finished up his term, and
The order
he
of
got
the
emotional
Palmetto?
then.
Well, I wasn't there for that. So.
Oh, you missed that. Okay.
Is this back to Jim being like, I'm a better friend to Alec than you are,
You've seen
Mark?
him get emotional frequently.
Sure, everybody gets emotional.
And he was extremely emotional after losing Maggie and Paul.
There's no question about that.
But
One
if
last
the,
point. Do you recall
if the phone gets tossed to the swamp and a hog
reading or
picks it
learning
up, does the screen
on the
go on?
morning of June the 8th
That's what I want to know.
that statement was released through the Colleton County Sheriff's Office that says, at this time, there's no danger to the public. If information is received that dictates otherwise,
we're just we
immediately
live in the
notify
weeds
the public.
now.
Yes.
Did that concern you?
Very much.
And why did it concern you?
Well,
How can they say
I had
that?
been over there that night. I left 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, came home, laid down for a little while, took a shower, and then I heard that. And I got on the phone with Sheriff Smalls on my way into work about 7:30 or so, and I
Called the
asked
sheriff
him
and was like, WTF?
if he knew anything about what that was about. And I went, he said, I don't know, I'll check. And then later that evening, the lieutenant from over here called me, and he explained that they didn't have any credible threats against anybody other than, they didn't have any threats, period, but they didn't have any, there was no knowledge, no information about anybody else being in harm's way. And we had probably a 30 or 45-minute conversation, and it didn't leave me any more.
He wasn't at ease about it.
I guess I still had questions because we have 60 or 70 people that work for us.
Marc Ball.
And the last thing I wanted was somebody coming in and you know, blasting up the place.
To the law firm.
And so we made
It's a
the decision to
reasonable
lock
fear.
the doors. And we did that for
I think.
probably a couple of months.
Right.
And just like we're doing now.
Thank you.
Just like we're doing now,
Indulgence.
which is sad.
That's all.
It's sad that the law firm has to do that now. It's sad that the law firm has to lock up now because of the
You were asked a little bit about Colleton Sheriff's
Hey,
Department
because of this
recusing
case.
themselves. Are you aware that they continue to assist on the case?
I know they were out there, and you know, I wouldn't, the internal politics of who's lead and who's not lead, I mean, I know that they were there because
didn't
one of the
care.
deputies
He was
called me
like,
the next
"They're all
morning
there."
and asked me where Paul's truck was, and I called Alec and verified where it was, and told, you know, I had several interactions with them. So yeah, they were still involved.
Why are they calling
weren't-
you and not John Marvin?
And for the first few months of the investigation, the local solicitor's office was still running the investigation, to your knowledge?
As far as I know, they were out there. Mr. Stone,
Y'all
his
don't
chief
hug the
assistant were out
hogs. The
there.
hogs are danger
and
bacon.
An investigator were out there the next
Those
day.
wild hogs will
And I want to say they were out there maybe 2 days.
wreck you.
But, you know, to lend whatever assistance they could
Don't
lend,
boop
I
the
guess.
snoot on the
Yeah,
hogs.
same.
And then I think it was August, I saw it like everybody else in the paper that Mr. Stone had recused himself.
And that'd be the same office for which the defendant had a badge, is that correct?
Correct. He was an assistant, and so was his father.
All right, thank you. Nothing further.
Yes, hogs are not friend-shaped. I guess they are friend-shaped because there are a lot of pigs that are real cute. But the wild hogs are
Law enforcement does the investigation.
Not real cute.
Solicitor's office does the prosecution.
That's the way it normally works.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Marc Ball looks gutted to have to be there. It's time for lunch. All this talk of danger bacon.
Please do not discuss the case.
All right. The jury's being dismissed. Wait, what time did we leave for lunch?
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to break, excuse the jury now, till 2:15.
Till 2:15. All right.
Please do not discuss the case.
All right. The judge is done with this day. That's fair. All right. Yeah, don't boop the snoot on the wild hogs. The wild hogs are not friend. Some pigs are friend shaped and make great pets. Wild hogs are not those friends, much like Mittens the murder kitten. All right, the judge is still on the bench, so I'm just going to wait a second to see if he has anything else to say. They're excusing the jury till 2:15, and then we'll see if the court has anything to say. It
So everyone be seated.
clearly does have something to say. We're 5-7.
How many more witnesses do you have, Mr. Waters?
I count
I
two.
believe just one, Your Honor. At lunchtime, there's one more that I might talk about, but I believe just one, Your Honor. And that would be Dr. Kinsey.
So unless I count it wrong, that'll be 6 witnesses. Wow, Poot exaggerated by one. Weird. Poot's missing, and he's been missing. He showed up this morning, got fiery, and went to what? Take a nap? I don't know.
I received an email
Oh shit.
that want to have council look at. Let's see who. Trying to figure who works here.
Oh man. I received an email that I want to have council look at. Can it be about watching Emily D. Baker on the YouTube so we start bumping legacy media off of the live trending page? Is that what the email's regarding? I don't think that's what the email's regarding. I want to see if the judge puts it on the record, but the judge having to bring an email to council's attention is not a good thing. It might, I hope, well, I don't know. I'm going to withhold any thoughts. We're going to answer some questions. Why is Poot standing
Right
up?
on the other side of
It's Poot's thing. He wants to err on the side of caution.
lunch.
Oh. I love lunch is what the closed caption said. That's not what the judge said, but I love lunch too. Thank you, closed captioning. I love lunch and snacks. I want to know what these emails are about so badly.
Anything else before we break for lunch?
Your Honor, very briefly, I know that there's been a request by the defense for a
Jury view.
Jury view, and for planning purposes, I didn't know if Your Honor had if we had some plan for that, to do that, I guess, after this last witness, or at what point?
Tomorrow.
State rests.
All right.
And depending on what time you rest today, it might be this afternoon.
Really?
Just,
Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Oh, Poot just showed back up.
Now or after lunch, whatever the court prefers, but I would like to make a council motion for the record regarding the cell phone testimony we just
Good.
Okay.
Your Honor, and the previous objection was that it was, which you overruled, I was objecting to it being beyond the scope of the expertise with which it was offered, but the Supreme Court and counsel...
That wasn't your objection.
That was the objection. I'm now making
Hold
a
on.
motion.
The sound's out of sync. Give me 1 second. Oh.
Counsel, the Supreme Court said that when admitting
I'm going to back
scientific
up real quick. Give me a sec. When the sound got out of sync, my brain couldn't handle
I would
it.
like to make a council motion
There we
for
go.
the record regarding the cell phone testimony.
Okay.
Okay.
Your Honor, and the previous objection was that it was, which you overruled, I was objecting to it being beyond the scope of the expertise with which it was offered.
That wasn't.
But the Supreme Court and counsel...
That wasn't your objection.
That was the objection. I'm now making a motion under counsel, Your Honor, for the record. And counsel, the Supreme Court said that when admitting scientific evidence, the trial judge must find the evidence will assist the trial fact, the expert witness is qualified, and the underlying science is reliable. The trial judge should apply the Jones factors to determine reliability, and then the case gives the Jones factors as considering the admissibility of scientific evidence.
I was trying to move those.
The Jones standard, the court looks at several factors, including one, publications and peer review of the technique.
You know what the rule says, beyond that?
Your Honor, the testimony we heard, which we had no notice of to make an earlier motion, there's no publications or peer review of the technique he described. There's no prior application of that method. He testified he's never done this before. Number three, the quality control procedures used to ensure reliability. No data was recorded at all, so there's none of that.
Your motion is late. You stipulated, you agreed that he was an expert. I gave you an opportunity to voir dire him, question him in any way.
Your Honor, we had no notice that he was going to offer
Talk about
this
yeeting the phone.
experiment.
The defense is in a tough spot with this.
Forensics expert, which he is. And there was no
Right.
notice that he had done this engineering analysis throwing his phone around.
I think that's fair.
He did not do an engineering analysis. He said he didn't do an engineering analysis. And what was scientific about his testimony?
Nothing. Nothing was scientific
Yes, Your Honor,
about his testimony.
was not scientific. That's why moving under counsel that it is not reliable scientific testimony and it should be struck.
All right. What says the state?
Your Honor, I think, again, as Your Honor's pointed out, there was no objection. This was in the nature of reply
Wait,
testimony.
you're not
And
the
I think
attorney that
again,
proffered the
there's
witness.
practical experience that is acceptable for opinions to be offered, and that's kind of what we're talking about. He understands the razor-weight feature and the manner in which it works and in which it doesn't work, and he offered his testimony based on his experiments in that regard. Counsel was allowed to fully cross-examine the witness, and
He
it
did
would
that.
ultimately go
Shit show.
to weight and not admissibility, Your Honor.
Goes to weight, not admissibility means that
The objections are noted for the record.
Goes
He
to the
did
jury.
not provide scientific testimony. He
Correct.
conducted an experiment and told the jury about it. The fact that had the defense had any questions concerning his qualification to testify as an expert witness, the defense had an opportunity to do that through voir dire or otherwise. Rule 5 does not apply to reply testimony in the sense that the state is not required to provide any advance report or anything. Your objection is noted for the record. The testimony speaks for itself, and that's that. Yes, sir.
Your Honor, one other matter. The forensic pathologist said this morning concerning some of her testimony about the white material that was noted. She indicated that she had never put that in her autopsy report. She'd never given this opinion before. We propose in rebuttal to bring our pathologist back to testify when they finish their case.
I'm not inclined to allow any rebuttal based on what I've heard at this point.
Even though she said wasn't in a report,
Yes, sir.
revealed it today for the first time.
yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor. So you're denying that request?
I'm not inclined to at this time.
Nothing else. The state's not done
When would be the
yet.
appropriate time?
When the state's
Well,
done.
when it's time for you to offer it, then I'll hear it fully, but I'm telling you now, I do not anticipate allowing any rebuttal based on what I've heard at this point.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Woo!
Anything else?
Lunch break, Your Honor.
Nothing from the defense, Your Honor.
I'll talk about rebuttal in just a second. The judge says wait till it's
We'll be in
time.
recess till 2:15.
Okay. Well, today was the day not to miss this trial. Today was the day. Poot was the one. The court's exhausted. The jury's exhausted. The lawyers are clearly exhausted. Let's do a quick summary and talk about this afternoon. Then we'll do some questions and then we'll get some lunch because it's time for lunch. We're almost done. We're almost done. I think the prosecution might finish this afternoon. I'm shocked that that might actually happen, but I think it might happen. All right, let's do a quick roundup of this. I'm gonna do my best. My brain is still buffering. So at the end of the morning of day 26,397,000, the state has gone through 5 rebuttal witnesses. One of the rebuttal witnesses is a witness previously offered with regard to extracting the phone and looking at it to make sure there wasn't attorney-client privileged information from the extraction of Alec Murdaugh's phone. He was then in rebuttal introduced as an expert in cell phone forensics to testify that he had experimented with yeeting his phone and seeing if the phone would wake if it is picked up gently or aggressively, and that he sat in his office and yeeted the phone and determined that it didn't always turn on with like raise to wake if it was hurled. It's an experiment that was done. The defense, I think, eviscerated the testimony and was like, okay, well, so you just sat around and threw your phone how many times? Like, did you write it down? Did you record the test? Did you make any scientific examination? And he's like, no, I threw the phone. And sometimes it turned on, and a lot of times it didn't turn on. And that was his testimony. I thought the cross-examination was quite good. We also saw extensive cross-examination of the forensic pathologist, Dr. Riemer, who got very rattled on cross-examination. And when you look at the two witnesses together, the expert with regard to cell phone forensics and phone yeeting, I thought had a very difficult cross in that the questioning was difficult, but he very much answered clearly, succinctly, without any additional explanation. I did this, I did that, I did this, I did that. That's it. Dr. Riemer, on the other hand, got very much defensive with Harpootlian and started over-explaining, I thought, her answers. And it made her seem rattled by Harpootlian. It made her seem as if she'd done something wrong, or it could come across that way to some, even though I don't think she did. She's like, well, I didn't x-ray the brain. I didn't need to. But instead of just saying, I didn't need to come to my conclusion, I determined manner and cause of death. I determined directionality. I determined all these things I didn't need to. She was explaining so much that it could come across to the jury as if she had made an error. And that was Poot's goal. I think there was a moment where she said that another reasonable pathologist could disagree with her, but that she didn't agree with those findings. And that's the part the defense is going to hold on to. There's another reasonable explanation. And two reasonable explanations, you will hear them talked about in the jury instructions. When there are two reasonable explanations, you take the one that tends towards not guilt. The jury will get to decide the weight to give that testimony. They can disregard the state's expert. They can disregard the defense expert. They get to decide the facts. But it made her look very defensive. Her direct was very good. It explained how she came to her conclusions. It explained how she thought that the entrance wound for Paul was over the shoulder and then the exit wound was at the top of the head. But the cross-examination was very impactful to her. And I think it was very impactful to her. So we'll see how the jury determines it. And we'll see how the jury weighs it. How they decide to weigh it, I don't know. If they're put off by Poot's style of questioning, they're not going to give it much credence. They're going to feel bad for her. If they're not put off by Poot's style of question, then they're going to say, well, why is she backpedaling? Even when I don't think she was backpedaling her testimony, but her style of answering was, if that makes sense. So it was a very interesting moment. I think it's a very good lesson for attorneys and those in the legal field as to why you don't have your witnesses in the room. She went on to the stand, I speculate, that she went on to the stand defensive because of the very fiery cross-examination with Ronnie Crosby, knowing that she was up next. And if she hadn't seen that, I just wonder if she would have been in a better position going on to the stand, or if she was defensive coming up because of witnessing the fiery cross with Ronnie Crosby. This is why your witnesses shouldn't be in the room. Your witnesses shouldn't be in the room. I hate it so much that it happens in this court. It is so unusual to me. It's so off-putting to hear witnesses explaining what other witnesses said because they've watched all the testimony. It's odd to me. And I also think it put her in a difficult position knowing that she was going to be attacked by Poot. And you could see it. So we'll see how the jury reads it. Who else did we get to? So I thought the pathologist did not do well on cross. I think she over-explained. We'll see how the jury takes it. Again, they can disregard it entirely. I thought Ronnie Crosby was very helpful and did a great job. I think Thomas Smalls was quick, succinct testimony, very much to the blue lights. This goes to Alec being kind of above the law. We'll see how they argue it. But it goes to Alec lying. Oh, I got permission from so-and-so. Well, no, you didn't. They brought him in. And he said, no, I didn't. So I thought that was very helpful and quick testimony. The Paul McManigal phone throwing, I don't know what the jury's going to make of that. It's one of the strangest things I've ever seen. And then Marc Ball's testimony, I think they asked him a lot about, would you ever ride around carrying like a handgun? Because when the defense crime scene reconstructionist testified, he's like, why would somebody bring two long guns? And again, that's assuming somebody brought weapons to this homicide scene. But why would somebody bring 2 long guns? It would make sense to have a handgun and a long gun. And then they were talking about the fact, well, Alec Murdaugh doesn't really shoot handguns a lot. And that's interesting. So I'm sure that your agreement or disagreement varies in the chat. I can see it, that some of you were like, the rebuttal was helpful. Some of you were like, the rebuttal was not helpful. Some of you were like, some was helpful, some was not helpful. Some of you were like, well, at least I was entertained this morning. And that's a very valid point. Thoughts on the phone throwing testimony? The poll right now is at absolute disaster. Why call him 67%? Helped make the prosecution's point 33%. And again, I think we will see the jury split on how they see things as well. And it really just depends on how they feel. So with that, oh, sorry, Megalina, I ended the poll. I see it. 67-32 with 13,000 votes. Thank you all for voting. Just a reminder to do the YouTube-y things. The state might be done with their rebuttal today. Let's talk about what happened right at the end after the jury was excused. After the jury was excused, the defense made another motion. I really like the defense attorney who does the tech, Barber, a lot. I do. I like his style of questioning. I think he asks good and smart questions. He gets snarky, but I find it's appropriate, like show the jury that this is not testimony that's reliable snark versus super off-putting, aggressive, yelling at the witnesses snark. I like his style very much more personally. So Barber's like, so you sat in your office and threw the phone. That's what you did? And he's like, yeah. He's like, great. So at the end of all of that, Barber made another motion to have that testimony struck. He made a motion in the middle of his questioning, and then he made a motion again after the jury was excused to have that testimony struck. Why? He said, look, we didn't object to him being a cell phone forensic expert. He is a cell phone forensic expert. But the shit that he's doing is not falling under the expert field of cell phone forensics. How he's just like doing shit and telling the jury about it, and you're allowed to conduct experiments. So they're trying to say, well, we didn't know this was what he was going to talk about. The court said this is too late. You should have voir dired it. What is his testimony going to be about? I feel for the defense in this because in this moment, Barber's like, I didn't know that they were going to testify to him throwing the phone around. But Barber could have voir dired on that. He thought they were going a different direction and they didn't. The defense or the prosecution didn't have to give the defense the heads up on that. And so Barber could have voir dired on that witness, didn't think he needed to, and then got caught with the judge being like, well, the objection's too late. You should have asked what he was going to. Okay, so he's a cell phone forensic expert testifying to what? And the court said, this is a fine experiment that he can testify to. The thing is, the defense doesn't have the opportunity to bring a sur rebuttal. And then we heard Poot asking for that. A sur rebuttal is a rebuttal after the state's rebuttal. We saw this in Depp v. Heard, because in Depp v. Heard, both sides were plaintiffs and both sides were defendants. So we would have Depp's case, then Heard's case, then Depp's rebuttal, then Heard's rebuttal. And that's what we saw in closing. Depp's closing, Heard's closing, Depp's rebuttal, Heard's rebuttal. There is not going to be a sur rebuttal in this case at this point. The court said they are disinclined to acquiesce to the defense's request in so many words. It's very, very rare to see a sur rebuttal in a criminal case. Why? Because the burden of proof lies squarely with the prosecution. The prosecution has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. That's why when the defense pokes holes in their case, they get a rebuttal case to answer those doubt-raising questions that the defense put in. But the defense doesn't get to go pick it again, because if the defense does a sur rebuttal, then the prosecution should get a sur rebuttal. The prosecution is going to get the last word because of the burden. That's why it's different sometimes in civil cases. So I don't think we're going to see. I don't think we're going to see that. I don't. And the court has been very clear about when they allow stuff like that and when they don't. I saw a question from Annie A in the chat. Question: have you gotten to 50K in chat before? Yes. If so, when? Our highest live concurrent on this channel was during Depp v. Heard at 370,000 live concurrent viewers. So we have gotten to 50K on lots of streams, trial streams and non-trial streams. We stream. Obstruction of justice, another theme with Alec. I mean, it's been very interesting. Oh, I didn't pull up the questions. I just shifted. So I don't think we're going to see a sir reply. I think we're going to get one more witness. The jury's going to do a jury view. The judge is inclined to do it this afternoon, which is wild. And if that's true, closing could be tomorrow. Here's what I'm hoping for. Jury view tomorrow morning, closing tomorrow afternoon, or jury view Wednesday, closing Thursday. We'll know the schedule better, but I think they'll be done. I think we'll be done with at least witnesses today. I think we'll be done with witnesses today. All right, let's get to questions. It's time for questions. We're going to get to as many as we can. Colin is answering my question. Would a cell phone turn on if it is yeeted towards a swamp and then picked up by a wild hog and run off with? And Colin said it will only turn on if the hog picks it up gently. I think that's fair. What is the process to get my hog certification from knowledge I've gained for this trial? I think we should just make Law Nerd hog experts. I think we have lots of hog experts, though a lot of you live in areas where wild hogs are an issue, and so you already been done no. My A-word device just binged that my coffee has been delivered. My husband ordered backup beans. The coffee beans are here. Question, will affect a jury view. What effect, will a jury view have on the jury? Depends on the jury. Here's the thing with a jury view, could go both ways. Jury view could go both ways. Because the jury, it depends on what the jury is thinking. The jury could look at the space and be like, there's no way they didn't see someone who wasn't someone they knew here and not react to it. It could go both ways. Or they could look at it and say, hey, there's no way one shooter did this in this time. So it can help the defense. The defense asks for the jury view. I think jury views help the jury make a decision. Which way that decision goes is up to the jury. But I do think jury views give them more information. It's much more visceral. But the jury view also might be more visceral of, we heard the testimony from, was it Ronnie Crosby or Marc Ball, who talked about getting blood on them when they walked into the feed room to try to clean things up. I think it was Ronnie Crosby. It's going to give them a more visceral reaction. I don't know what the email that I forgot to bring this up. I don't know what the email the court brought up to the attorneys at the end was. I hope we hear from Avery Wilkes. Of all the reporters, he seems to have the most connects to the attorneys in this case. And I hope we hear a little bit about that. Melissa L. in the chat said, is it possible that the shooter was knocked down by Paul struggling with him and then shot the shooter while on the ground? I think that is possible. We'll see what the prosecution hasn't laid out a clear theory of how that happened. And I think it's because they can't. And I think that's hard for the prosecution to overcome. How did someone shoot this? How did they make these shots? How did they make these angles? I don't know. Poot Maddie can't run the courtroom. I think Poot's running the courtroom today a bit, but he's definitely gotten frustrated. However, some of it I think is his act. I think Poot enjoys sparring in court this way. And so some of the is his shtick. Question, you mentioned they did him so bad. Comment was, Lady Kirkpatrick, let me read this again. Question, you mentioned they did him so bad comment was mentioned yesterday and there was more context added or background. Can you elaborate? I don't remember mentioning that. I don't remember when I mentioned that. There was more context added in that his brother testified that he had said that before. And he had said it when the brother saw it. I don't remember mentioning that today. I must have mentioned that yesterday. So more context was added. Oh, was it when I was joking this morning about shit you up real bad? I was joking about Alec Murdaugh's brother testifying that he shit his pants in the car. I was making a joke about because his brother Ronnie did testify that Alec shit his pants in the car. And I was saying that was a shit you up real bad, because that's exactly what Chris Wilson said Alex said to him. Alex said, I shit you up real bad. And the more context we got to shit you up real bad was a joke because, well, John Marvin said that Alex shit his pants literally in the car. So I was making a joke about that testimony. But John Marvin also did, in a legitimate, serious way, testify that he had heard Alec say things like, they did him so bad. They did him so bad after this happened before. So that I said earlier this morning, if that makes sense. Thanks for doing this, Emily. Phone expert was a disaster while explaining a lot, and too much pathologist is a very likable witness. I think the pathologist is a likable witness. And if it depends on how the jury feels, it depends on how the jury feels about that witness as to how they'll feel about the cross-examination. And I think the chat is split with this too, because there are some that are like, hey, it feels like Poot's just beating up on her to make her change her story, and she's trying to say, no, that's not what I said. And there's some that are going to be like, why are you backpedaling and over-explaining? It makes it look like you've done something wrong. So it's going to depend on how this jury feels about the witness. Remember, the jury decides the facts. The jury decides how much weight to give to that witness. And that is a careful balance for an attorney. Can you please show subtitles again? Greeting from Switzerland. I go back and forth between feeds, and I know that devices can subtitle on device if you want to turn on yours as well. I know that's an option for a lot of devices. I don't know how to do that on every device, but I try to switch back and forth between the two, depending on sound and depending on, well, there was camera glitchiness that I just couldn't handle. Sally Sweet said, would Alex, having been a lawyer, know how much info can be extracted from phones and GPS? I think the prosecution established that really well during his testimony. Question, what does it matter if he was shot up or down? That still doesn't say who did it, right? It is important because it goes to the theory of how these shootings happened and explains the dynamics of how they happen, and they're both going to argue it. But no, it still doesn't say who did it. McKenna said, into the weeds of it. Yep, into the weeds. The prosecution lost this case in rebuttal. He'll get acquitted after this mess. Before I thought hung jury, not anymore. Molly, I don't know. I think it might have changed some minds though. One way or the other, or solidified where people are already thinking. If jurors have already made up their mind, we see a lot of confirmation bias in just life. So if jurors have already made up their mind, they're going to find the things in this rebuttal that confirms their opinion. They're not supposed to have made up their mind yet, but if they have, they're just going to pick the things on this that confirms what they're already thinking. And that happens a lot. I mean, it happens. It's a part of being a human. Reese said, thoughts on Poot's strategy of dramatic increase in objections. As someone who is undecided on this case, it's coming across as desperate, panicky. And it depends, because I can see it coming across as desperate and panicky, like we don't want the state to hear anything. But I can also see it coming across as, oh, well, now the state's just being so heavy-handed. This is an unfair prosecution. This is just, they have built a bridge too far and they are just beating up on our client. I think it can go both ways. I'm sorry to keep saying that. Interesting, because in Massachusetts near Boston, they have blue lights in personal vehicles for details. I'm not sure what that's regarding. Solicitors, I've not seen prosecutors have emergency vehicle lights in personal vehicles. I've seen law enforcement have emergency lights in non-black and white vehicles and undercover vehicles. I've never seen people allowed to have police code lights in their car unless they are law enforcement. Melissa Joy in the chat, I will go grab that real quick. Melissa Joy in the chat said, Emily, why can't a juror make up their mind? What? The jurors are charged at the beginning that they are not to make up their mind on this case until the end of the evidence. They are not supposed to have already determined what it is. Not at all. So they are not supposed to make up their mind until the end of all of the evidence. You two are like me and my hubby. I order, he goes. Today, we didn't have coffee beans, so there was no coffee at home this morning, but I didn't see my husband's multiple text messages because I didn't realize my phone was on Do Not Disturb. I feel like this trial is never going to end. Yep. The state still hasn't proven it for me. Thanks for sharing your days with us. I love sharing my days with y'all. I'm going to speed run these as best I can. If y'all send super chats now, I might not get to them because I'm going to have to take some food. So the chat is saying email. We want to know what's in the email. I get it, Penny, for your thoughts. I want to know what's in the fucking email too. I'm here with you. At this point, it should be feisty when it comes to first degree murder charged with prosecution and the judge are a perfect storm to convict without proving the crime actually charged. All are corrupt. I don't know if we have seen corruption in this. I appreciate that that's your perspective. Quesadilla pickles. I think there's been some overreaching for sure. Corruption, I don't know yet. Question with the new Netflix doc out and it being all about the victims in the boat case talking, does it do anything to this case since it contradicts a lot of things about relationships? It shouldn't, because the jury shouldn't see it. Shouldn't do anything about this case. This is from this morning. Kate asked improper reply what Dick was arguing about earlier when he was trying to make objections for improper rebuttal and improper reply, where that it goes beyond the rebuttal and that is beyond what they should do. Tasha Martin said, Emily, I finally watched your TED Talk. It has given me the courage I need to quit my job. Yay! I'm going to find my 3 words to change my life. Thank you. You're welcome. Tasha, congratulations. Please keep the law nerds and myself updated. And you're always welcome to email me and keep me updated. Nefertiti said, is Poot trying to get out that the law firm had something to do with the murders? I don't know. Poot, stop. Poot must not be up for re-election because this doesn't look good for him. To be fair to Poot, as I try to be most of the time, he's doing his job by zealously advocating his client. I don't think it should be held against him how he's doing his job, because he is a working attorney and he's a defense attorney and he's doing his job as a working defense attorney. There are things about the way he does his job I find off-putting, but it doesn't mean he's not doing his job to the fullest degree of zealous advocacy. What you're seeing from Poot, for sure, is zealous advocacy. So to be fair to him, that is zealous advocacy. It can be off-putting, but it is. It shouldn't be held against him when he's up for re-election. It might, but it shouldn't be. I don't think. Hempland, Texas said, but could it have happened with birdshot? Isn't it used to make less damage? I don't remember what this question was to, but yes, birdshot does less damage because birds are little. Can jail phone calls come in? Jamie, in general, yes. In this case, they have not. But in general, yes, they can. Jail calls can come in depending on what's on them. They have to be proper evidence. They have to be relevant. Kelly said, I'm so confused over the pathology reports. I really like her, though, the way she explains, but she talks fast and too much. She did explain quite a lot. All right, I'm going to get to a few last questions, and we are going to roll. John Marvin said he used the farm truck because his wife needed the car to take the kids to school. School is not in session 6/8/21. Why lie? I don't know if school is not in section 6/8/21 in that area. Some kids get out in May, some kids get out in June, some kids go to summer school, some kids go to religious school. I don't know, but that's what he said. I don't know if he's lying. He wasn't confronted on that. Please explain argumentative and badgering. What constitutes badgering? Badgering and argumentative are essentially the same. And at some point when you are literally fighting with a witness and not asking questions anymore, but you said this, but da-da-da, it can get to the point where they are just fighting with each other, and that's not a question and answer scenario. We got close. I think there were room to object argumentative to the point because they were arguing between each other. But if I'm the prosecutor, I'm letting the two of them argue because you never know what Ronnie Crosby might say. And I don't want to look as a prosecutor like I'm protecting that witness who's answering honestly and is expressing the frustration. I would have let it go too. I would have let it go. So, when you're out on a date night, do you mind fans interrupting, asking for a friend? No, we're always happy to have chats with the law nerds. And when we see law nerds in public, it's always a delight. And we are always so happy to say hello to the law nerds that we see in public. Birthday was 19th. Forgot to say hi. Can I get a goat too? A birthday goat for everyone. A birthday goat for all. A birthday goat for all. Victoria asked a great question. Oh, and then I'm going to have to go eat lunch, so I have time. Why did the audio at the kennel not get analyzed for what was really said? The evidence speaks for itself. The jury hears what they hear at the kennel, and those who know the parties involved identified the voices. So, because res ipsa loquitur, the thing speaks for itself. Lisa Tipton said Brian Enton is live on the Moselle property right now. On the property? I don't know if that's a good idea without permission. Can you explain the motion from yesterday? The motion from yesterday was for a jury view. It was granted, so the jury will get to go walk around Moselle. Do the defense attorneys always cross on rebuttal? Yes, because the rebuttal is the prosecution's witnesses. So when the prosecution's proffering the witness, the defense does cross-examination of the witness. And I think I'm trying to get to most. I work for a defense company and have a test range in Florida. We had to hire a company to get rid of the feral pigs attacking employees at test range. The pigs also attack the security vehicles. Danger bacon, just like murder mittens. It's not a good idea. Kimmy said, am I the only Southerner who hasn't killed hogs? I think they're very regional. I mean, are the hogs we're talking about, do they look like the Arkansas Razorback? Is that what they look like? Jan T, I wanted to end with your super chat and just tell you I am so sorry for your diagnosis. That is a very, very rough week. And to keep sane, Mom, and I watch you and discuss from different states. Wanted to tell Law Nerd Mom I love her. Jan, I love you. The Law Nerds love you. We are here for you. Thank you for being a part of our community. And I'm sorry. Cheers. We love you. And we're here for you. We're sending virtual hugs to our community and to you. All of the virtual hugs. So the Law Nerds are sending you all the love in the chat, and I hope you see it. Brian Ray said, and then I said I was going to end, and then I answered one more because I saw the question, because ADHD is the gift that keeps on giving. What does Alec Murdaugh do on his lunch break? He goes back to lockup. I think the lawyers can probably, depending on if there's a lockup right at the courthouse, there probably is. He goes back into lockup to have lunch. His lawyers can probably sit back in the lockup with him. A great question too for like Runkle of the Bailey and Natalie Lawyer Chick, who are defense attorneys, about how they manage that during trial, because both of them are really active trial attorneys and do a lot of trials from the defense perspective. Do they, depending on the day, they might not need to sit with their client at lunch. They might. It just depends. So with that, Law Nerds, I love you. I love this community. Thank you so much for being here. Please go hit the reminder for notify me after lunch. Let's continue to like build our own thing over here on our platform as a community. And I will talk to all of you soon. We're going to go ahead and end and go get some lunch. Enjoy your lunch. I'll enjoy my lunch. It's time for lunch. It's time for lunch. Let's go. Let's go get some lunch. Let's do it. Bye.
You can find all the Law Nerd goodies at lawnerdshop.com. Connect with me on social media at the Emily D. Baker. And don't forget to check out my podcasts, The Emily Show, and the new podcast, Quick Bits, summarizing everything I talk about on my Tuesday and Thursday live streams. You know, when you only have time for just the quick bits.